don't know. They're not coming out of Kansas anymore, so I don't know where I'm supposed to. I know where I'm supposed to get it. Just saving paper. Saving paper. I can hear you. No. I'm looking here. June planning board meeting. Next issue, the copy of the review letter for the above mentioned application. Also, this is for that you have received the student invite. This is 18 pages. I didn't print it.
Your stuff's all good. Yeah, this is 50. Still up there?
Yep. This meeting is being continued.
Continue. You're unmuted, so they can probably hear you. Okay. If you need to make it louder, you know, you go to the
Yeah.
volume. Okay.
Marty, you're off mute.
Lamp on. Marty, you might want to put the lamp on. Can you see yourself?
Yeah.
And how clear is it?
Marty, you might want to mute yourself. Okay, good evening, everybody. It's 7:30. And I would like to call to order the Old Bridge, New Jersey Planning Board meeting for this evening, October 5th, 2021. And if everybody would rise and salute the flag. I pledge of allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
liberty,
with liberty, and
justice for all.
justice for all.
Okay, can we have announcements and roll call?
Good evening, board members. Adequate notice of this meeting of the Old Bridge Township Planning Board has been provided in accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act at least 48 hours prior to the commencement of the meeting by prominently posting in the municipal complex an announcement given the time, date, location, and agenda of this meeting, mailing such announcement to the Home News Tribune, and filing a copy of such announcement with the municipal clerk. Mr. De Palma,
Here,
Mr. Renna is absent. Mr. Lauer,
Here.
Mr. Mamakis,
Here.
Ms. Cannon,
Here.
Mr. Schmitz,
Here.
Mr. Lenning,
Here.
Mr. Perry,
Here.
Mr. Pink,
Here.
Mr. Garcia, Mr. Marucci,
Here.
Mr. Sardello,
Here.
Ms. Shapiro, Ms. Shapiro, Mr. Lavallo,
I'm here.
Mr. Har, Mr. Gerke, we can begin the meeting now.
Okay, again, good evening, everybody. And this evening, we're starting off the agenda with the minutes from September 7th, 2021. And I'd like to call for a vote. Do I have a motion?
I'll move it.
Moved
I'll
by-
second it.
Okay, and second by Mr. Pink.
We need a roll call?
Ms. Sawant, you're on mute.
Sorry. I'm doing it the first time, so bear with me.
You
Mr.
got big
De
shoes
Palma,
to fill.
Yes.
Mr. Renner, oh, he's absent. Ms. Lauer,
Yes.
Mr. Mamakis,
Yes.
Ms. Cannon,
Yes.
Mr. Schmitz,
Yes.
Mr. Lenning,
Yes.
Mr. Perry,
Yes.
Mr. Pink,
Yes.
Chairman Marucci.
Yes. Okay, then we move on to the second agenda item, which is discussions on next year's 2022 Planning Board meeting schedule. Now, Vina, are you taking that as well?
Yeah, Chairman Marucci, I had shared a schedule with the board members at the last meeting. And please mute yourself. I had shared the schedule with the board members. I just wanted to bring it back and see if there were any questions, concerns, and if we can finalize the schedule tonight. We did check, it does not coincide with any holidays. We ensured that no religious holidays fall on those days. So unless you have any questions or concerns, we can take a roll call.
I'm okay. How about any of the other board members?
I'm okay.
So this is just us moving it to what, the last Thursday of the month, right? From the first Tuesday?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay.
Excuse me, Chairman Marucci, I thought it was the fourth Thursday, not necessarily the last Thursday. Is that, do I have that right?
That is correct. It's the fourth Thursday.
Okay, thank you.
If you would like, I have it on my screen. I can share the schedule if the board wants to take one look.
Yeah, let's take a quick look at it. Okay, are there going to be any issues with the December meeting, the 22nd? Is everybody going to be around?
Why do we have two meetings in December? Or we don't have one
Not
November?
one in November.
The last Thursday in November is Thanksgiving.
Yeah, okay. Well,
I think it's just the way that it falls.
I would think.
And everybody's
that-
everybody's okay with the 22nd of December?
No,
I wish I could tell you what's happening the 22nd of October, Dean.
Yeah, let alone, yeah. Yeah, I don't
A
even know
long
about
ways away.
tomorrow. All right, so we'll keep it as is for now. And unless anybody else has any issues with what they see. Okay, then I'll put it to a vote. Do I have a motion?
I'll move it.
Moved by
I'll
Mr.
second
Lauer
it.
and second by Mr. Pink.
Mr. De Palma,
Yes.
Mr. Lauer,
Yes,
Mr. Mamakis,
Yes.
Ms. Cannon, Ms. Cannon,
yes,
Mr. Schmitz,
Yes.
Mr. Lenning,
Yes.
Mr. Perry,
Yes.
Mr. Pink,
Yes.
Chairman Marucci.
Yes. Okay, next up on discussions is a request for a special meeting.
Board members, I had shared a letter received by the planning department on behalf of Regency Center that is requesting a special meeting in November. And I shared the letter with the board members to review it and consider. Tonight, we have them scheduled for a waiver hearing. With one of the waiver being required, they're still not complete. However, they are hoping to get a date in November. And I did have a conversation with our board attorney. So Joe, if you would like to chime in and share your schedule, and then we can go around and see how everyone feels. I know there are 2 council meetings on 2 of the Tuesdays in November. So we are actually left with only one meeting, which is November 16th.
Yes, Chairman, if I may, I did speak to Vina about this. Unfortunately, I am not available November 16th, as many land use and municipal attorneys and professionals, as that is the week of the League of Municipality Convention down in Atlantic City. I have pre-scheduled events and appearances that I need to make for that convention. So unfortunately, I am not available the 16th, the 17th, the 18th, the evening of the 18th is when I would be returning, so in the afternoon of the 18th. But these are things, unfortunately, I cannot reschedule. They've been scheduled for many months now.
Okay, so Vina, how do we handle that?
We have a meeting coming up on December 7th, which is 2 weeks from November 16th. If the application is deemed complete, we may be able to put them, depending on when they're deemed complete, we may be able to put them for December 7th, or at that point, the applicant can ask for a special meeting. But I believe they're still not complete. And November is a tough month to get everybody on board. So maybe we would just wait to deem it complete. And as of now, there's nothing scheduled for December 7th. So maybe that could be a meeting date if they are deemed complete.
Okay, so we'll keep it tentative for the 7th.
Yeah, I mean, I want to base it on when it is deemed complete, because they need to produce some drawings. So I will give in a date once they're deemed complete, but looks like they may be able to go on the December 7th meeting.
Okay.
Because for me, if there is some other application that is deemed complete prior to Regency Center being deemed complete, then I would have to give that applicant the date.
Okay, so again, we'll keep it tentative for the 7th and just keep it on our radar and see what happens.
Definitely.
Okay, now should I put that to a vote as well?
I don't think that's necessary, Mr. Chairman, for a vote. That's just a discussion item as to if we were setting a special meeting date, we would have to, but the fact that we're not, I don't think we need to vote for.
Okay, very good. Okay, so we'll close that out, and then we move on to the next agenda item, which is resolutions. And we have an escrow deficient resolution, which is number 69-2020P, Oak 18 LLC.
So, board members, this is the first time I'm actually working on an escrow deficiency letter like this, I did reach out to Mr. Sardello to check if this was the norm or if it was required. But because in the past we have been doing it, for this time, I have put it on the planning board's agenda. This is an application that was heard by the planning board last beginning of this year, and they're deficient on escrow. So I just need an authorization to ask them for additional escrow to continue work on the application.
Okay. Okay, so we'll put that, I'm sorry.
Joe, do we need to take a vote on this?
Yes.
Yes, since for this one, we're still doing the resolution. Mr. Chairman and members of the board, just so you're aware, Vina and I did speak about this, and this has been the past practice of the board. However, this does also put a delay on sometimes getting the escrows submitted when they are become deficient. It can delay the applications, can delay hearings, and when we only have one meeting a month, that really can cause an issue for some developers, some applicants. So moving forward, we may alter this procedure. It's not required by law, but it is something that has been the past practice of the board. So we may have a different procedure moving forward, but since this is the last one we have done this way, we do need a motion, second, and a roll call to adopt the resolution.
Okay, so what would the revised process be?
So, Mr.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I can jump in. I'm very animated with this topic. So, Chairman Marucci, what I have noticed is, and this was brought to my attention by the finance department as well, sometimes when application is scheduled for a meeting, they do have enough escrows, but by the time they come to a public hearing, between the time spent by all the professionals, there is not enough escrow in the account for us to proceed with the meeting to cover for Mr. Sardello's cost for attending the meeting or my Nicole's time. So moving forward, we will ensure that we will have a check 2 weeks prior to a public hearing. We will look at the escrow and we will come up with a projection as to how much hours or how much money we need in the escrow to be able to hear the application. We will reach out to the applicant in advance to let him know that they're deficient on escrow and they need to replenish their account and give them time to come in. So we will be handling it in a different manner. We will come up with a protocol to have those escrows replenished prior to hearing those applications so that we don't come or we're not in a situation where we are deficient on escrow. I was told that it is against the accounting laws and you cannot incur a cost when you don't have the funds available.
Okay, very good. Okay, so for now, we will put this to a vote. So for 69-2020 Oak 18 LLC, do I have a motion?
I'll move it.
By Mrs. Cannon and a
I'll
second
second it.
by Mr. De Palma.
Mr. De Palma,
Yes.
Mr. Lauer,
Yes.
Mr. Mamakis,
Yes.
Mr. Cannon, Miss Cannon, sorry,
Yes.
Mr. Schmitz,
Yes.
Mr. Lenning,
Yes.
Mr. Perry,
Yes.
Mr. Pink,
Yes.
Chairman Marucci.
Yes. Okay, and moving on the agenda, the next item is waivers. And that is for Regency Center Acquisitions LLC, which is 03-2020 for amended preliminary and final site plan waiver. Do we have the applicant attorney or the applicant themselves?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, good evening. Kenneth Pape on behalf of Regency Center.
Hi, Mr. Pape.
Good evening. Mr. Chair, this is a submission waiver request that was provided to Ms. Sawant. We have seen Ms. Sawant's written report to the board with her recommendations, and I would defer to Ms. Sawant for her presentation to the board.
Okay, Vina?
Please bear with me.
Oh, okay.
So the applicant is requesting a phase 1 amended preliminary and final site plan with C variances to construct roughly 360,000 acres of retail development. This is part of the Oaks development that fronts on US 9 and is at the corner of Jake Brown Road and US 9. It will include an 80,000 square feet village supermarket by ShopRite. The applicant has requested 3 waivers, which is profile of proposed streets, profile of all streets adjoining the project, and then mailboxes and other street furniture. We agree that all of the above waivers can be easily granted. Some of the intersections or the roadways are being constructed already, and NJDOT has also been working on the intersection of Shoemeister and Route 9. The improvements are nearly to completion, but there is a segment that is on Jake Brown Road between Route 9 and the proposed access aisle, which would be the improvements within which would be a responsibility of Regency Center. So we require that the applicant provide us with those profiles. I did speak to the engineer this afternoon, and he will be working on those profiles. He will be in touch with Nicole, myself, and our consultant and put this together in front of us so that they can be deemed complete.
Mr. Chairman, on behalf of Regency, the request for profiles on the segment of Jake Brown Road is an acceptable request. Our engineers advise us the work will be complete this Friday, but for the legal holiday on Monday, we'll file the additional information with Ms. Sawant and Ms. Shapiro on October 12th.
Okay, and Vina, you're comfortable with that?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, any questions or comments from our board professionals?
None for me. Thank you.
Okay, any from our board members? Okay, so I will put that to vote now. Do I have a motion?
I'll move it.
Moved
Second
by
it.
Mr. Lauer and second by Mr. Mamakis.
Mr. De Palma,
Yes.
Mr. Lauer,
Yes.
Mr. Mamakis,
Yes.
Ms. Cannon,
Yes.
Mr. Schmitz,
Yes.
Mr. Lenning,
Yes.
Mr. Petty,
Yes.
Mr. Pink,
Yes.
Chairman Marucci.
Yes.
Mr.
Okay,
Chair-
thank you, Mr. Pape.
Thank you and good night.
Good night. Okay, then we move on to our 2 applications for this evening, and first being
Chairman
01.
Marucci, I'm
Yes.
sorry. I'm sorry to interject. Chairman
No.
Marucci, there
Yes.
was an addition, and I just thought that you had it in a different order, so I didn't interrupt earlier. There is a presentation that I want to make to the planning board, and the agenda was updated. It should have been right after the discussions. And it
Okay.
was a presentation for the Rose Lambertson Golf Course.
Okay, I don't see that on my agenda and I printed it out. Maybe I just didn't get a revised copy or I didn't see it. Okay, that's fine.
May I proceed?
Absolutely, sure.
Thank you so much.
you.
So there has been a lot of speculation on the redevelopment plans or the studies that were approved recently by the planning board, by the council, as to if there is newer construction on Glenwood Country Club golf course, then what happens to the golf course? Will Old Bridge Township not have a golf course anymore? So I thought this was a right time to come and just brief the board with what Nicole and I have been working on and the administration for the past few months. You may recall we do have a redevelopment area, the Rose-Lambertson redevelopment area. The plan was written sometime in 2006. The property, which contains 4 parcels and roughly 218 acres of land, is owned by the township. In 2006, there was a developer, KBM developers, who was interested in constructing and operating a golf course on that property. Subsequently, the redevelopment agency designated KBM Group as the conditional redeveloper, and a plan was created to support an 18-hole golf course, which was to be built by that group. Almost 20 years later, we don't have a golf course at that property. The township had purchased that property using Green Acre funding, so with intent that this property would be used for recreation use. As part of our redevelopment agreement or the various negotiations with SEGME, SEGME proposes to construct and build the golf course, which now we will be losing with the one which the Glenwood Country Club, and relocating it onto Rose-Lambertson site. And I wanted to share with you first the original concept of the golf course to give you an idea as to what was being proposed originally and the changes or the preliminary concept that we have been working on for the past few months. What you see on the screen is a concept that was prepared for KBM, wherein this was again an 18-hole golf course, had a parking lot at the corner of Amboy and Lambertson, and the access to this parking lot was also within this this area. Now, when we were creating a newer concept, and you'll see there are 4 parcels. I believe at that time it was only 3 parcels. The triangular piece that is at the bottom was added later on. The plan was updated to include the 4th parcel. Now, with this, there were some challenges because there are residences right across the street from this parking area, and there were concerns about traffic, light, glare. So now, when working on a newer concept, SEGME has come up with this plan, which I would like to share with the board and go over the plan. Give me a second. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
I'm going to zoom in a teeny bit. So now the proposal is for an 18-hole publicly owned golf course. The golf course will contain a driving range and a mini golf. What you see on the screen is a driveway that takes you to a parking lot. This will be the miniature golf. The pink building that you see is a roughly 6,000 square feet clubhouse building, and the driving range will be located in this area. On the other side is, on this corner of the property is the maintenance building, which is 5,000 square feet. And the design of the golf course was largely driven by the fact that the property has significant environmental constraints, and the majority of the design is based on cart path crossing and the ability to use 0.25 acres of disturbance. The primary objective while designing this golf course was to avoid an entrance or exit on Amboy Avenue, which has been a traffic concern in the past. As I said before, the driveway that leads to the parking lot it actually serves three amenities, which is the golf course, the driving range, and the miniature golf course. The clubhouse would have one cashier and one check-in area for all these amenities. The maintenance building is carefully tucked away from the golf course. The pump house will be fenced for safety, and there are several ponds within the golf course that will help with the irrigation and water conservation. The developer proposes to install one well for the irrigation purposes, and the domestic service for both the clubhouse and the maintenance building will be served by OBMUA. There are again several wet ponds within the golf course that will also be used for irrigation. In terms of crossings, there will be adequate speed bumps along Lambertson Road to slow down traffic. But this concept is like an initial concept. Nicole, myself, we are currently reviewing the concept, trying to fine tune. The one issue that I came across when I was reviewing this concept against the existing redevelopment plan was that the redevelopment plan was written for KBM developers who was going to lease the property from the township. In this case, the township is going to own the property. It's going to operate the golf course. So the plan actually does not really support what we are doing. After consulting with the township attorney, it turns out that the best course of action in this case would be to rescind the existing redevelopment plan. It's anyways outdated. It was written in 2006. So, and the underlying zone at that time was R40, but then over the years, the area was rezoned to environmental recreation and conservation area. So that area, the ER zone, allows for golf courses. It allows for miniature golf. It allows for driving range. Unfortunately, there aren't bulk standards to support these uses. So it's a use that is permitted, but there is no bulk standards. So the ideal way to handle this would be to rescind the redevelopment plan and flush out our ER zone standards, create new standards that is so that we have a facility that is compliant. And I think that's all on my end. Nicole, do you want to add on to anything? We do have the developer here if the board has any questions.
Thank you, Veena. I just want to reiterate what you said. I mean, you did mention everything, but it is still a work in progress and the details are being fine-tuned. We are taking special care on Lambertson Road because we know that it's sort of once you go from Darn Partridge and you turn that corner, it's almost like a straight runway path to that intersection of Amboy and Lambertson Road. So we're going to take care of just some advanced warning features in for the cart crossings and some solar powered advanced warning beacon controlled lights so that people are aware that there is a crossing, a mid-block crossing in that area for the golf carts. And certainly the design is progressing quite nicely at this point. You might notice, and Veena had mentioned that the idea of this design is to relocate the clubhouse, the parking areas to a more inconspicuous location than it was in the earlier iteration. And I think it's done nicely on this plan, and certainly we'll be back in front of the board to discuss further once the design is finalized with the developer. But he is eager to work with the town, as his professionals are as well, And we have been in constant communication over the last couple of months to try and make this come to fruition for the town.
I have a question. Is the design for the golf course, is that the one from 2006? Is it modified or?
No, so
Basic design of the golf.
This is a completely new design. So this has no relation to the previous concept, except for the fact that this is also an 18-hole golf course, but the previous concept did not take into consideration a driving range, a miniature golf. So these are add-ons with the new concept, and I think it works beautifully.
Who designed it? I mean, somebody that designs golf courses, or?
Yes.
Who designed?
I think Ephraim is here to answer that question, but yes, it was designed by an expert who specializes in golf course designs.
Thank you, Vina. Ephraim Gersbury, I think I appeared before the planning board before. I appreciate the time and the opportunity to do this amenity for the town. I think it's an incredible amenity. To answer your question, Ms. Cannon, it was designed by, it is and was and will be, continue to be fine-tuned by Stephen Kay. Stephen Kay has done Fiddler's Elbow. He's done Architects course in New Jersey. He's been involved in Forsgate. He's been involved in Seaway and Woodmere. I can name probably 30, 40 golf courses that he's been involved with. He's very reputable and happens to be a New Jersey native. He's a teacher at the Rutgers Institute for Golf. He's a professor there. He's considered an expert, and along with being an expert, he's also local. So he wants to be intimately involved with not only the design, but the construction, the shaping, etc., which is why I chose him. But he's considered a very, very reputable golf course architect. And the plan is to go back, is just, I don't want to bore you, but it's totally different than the old course. The old course was focused on the driving range. Their focus was to have a teaching area, etc. The golf course was secondary. We flipped that around, which 99.9% of courses are designed for the golf course, and the driving range is secondary, as well as we added the miniature golf. Our attitude is, if you're familiar with First Tee, the goal is to get kids involved in golf from very early on, have a community amenity in an 18-hole miniature golf course, get them excited, and continue on through driving range and onto the course.
So First Tee is on board with this as well?
We plan, we've not officially done it, but we absolutely plan on having an offering First Tee. Obviously, I don't know where Old Bridge High School plays, and this is an Old Bridge golf course. So that will be first and foremost. That, as well as Old Bridge residents would have priority. Old Bridge residents would have different pricing. Pricing is based upon Green Acres has rules on different pricing.
Okay, and the only other question I have is, how close is this iteration to what you foresee being the final plan?
I think this is very, 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 very close, short of more technical things related to crossings, Lambertson. The course design is really close to final. Trying to see if we can stretch in the field a par 3 into a par 4. Short of that, this is really the design. Has a lot of makeup to, if you notice there's no holes running along Amboy Avenue. That's for safety reasons, because if you slice a ball or draw a ball, you don't want it going onto Amboy Avenue. Lambertson is much quieter. Even from the 2005 to this, there are new insurance rules and rules on how far holes can be from each other, and new standards related to golf courses.
Gotcha.
I also
Okay,
own
thank
2
you.
golf courses, so I'm familiar with this as well.
Great. Thank you very much. Any questions from the board professionals or board members? Any more input?
The one thing I would say, I was at a golf outing this past weekend for the Old Bridge High School baseball team, and I was asked about this a lot, and I know there's a lot of excitement about having the course in town, especially one that is going to be municipal owned, to be able to have a lot of events there, like that outing that just happened this past weekend. Ephraim, the only thing that I would add is, can you make some of those water traps a little bit smaller? I foresee every one of my golf balls going in there, especially on 10 and 12.
I assume you're righty, and you would fade the ball.
It doesn't matter. I am terrible, no matter what. I'll slice it. I'll hook it. I'll do whatever it takes. I'm terrible.
How about I'll trade you some? We'll have a few less bunkers and a few, and the water will be there. It's visually pleasing, but I appreciate that. We'll get you better though. This place will get you better.
Yes, and I do know that if I'm not mistaken, Stephen K. He is involved in Forsgate Country Club, if I'm not mistaken. Yep. And I know that course from everyone that I know has played on it. My parents live in Monroe. I know that it's a gorgeous course, and if it's anywhere near to what Forsgate and some of the other ones like Fiddler's Elbow that you had mentioned, I'm really excited, and I'm sure the golfers in town and in the surrounding towns would be excited about playing on a course like this.
And one thing, if I could just add, is there's a very, most golf courses were built 50, 60, 70, 80 years ago. There's not many that have been built in the last 20 or 30 years in New Jersey. And the beauty of building a course from scratch is the technology is so much better. The infrastructure, the way we move water, the way we use water and conserve, and then focus the hydration on the fairways and leave the rough a little bit longer. Those things have gotten better, and I think that's a big advantage of this course as well.
Right. Okay, any other bad golfers that want to make any comments?
I just want to make one comment that we will be back in front of the planning board once the plan is fine-tuned, probably later this year, and make another presentation. Since this is a township-owned or municipal project, there is no application that is filed with the planning board. However, we will come and make a presentation for the planning board to offer comments.
Yeah, I would just like to say that this land was acquired about 25, maybe a little more years ago. And I really am hoping that it gets to be what we had dreamed of before I depart.
Well, our goal is to start early next year. The goal is to be seeding in June, July, August, which is a very aggressive schedule, but we want to get this green very, very quickly, and we believe we could do that.
So you're looking for a 2023 opening?
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
Oh, for sure.
Okay. Moving along, anything else? Any other comments?
I have a comment. First off, I'm not a golfer, so yeah, but I do, once the news broke about this golf course, a lot of residents had approached me and asked me about it. And there's a lot of excitement about this course. So hopefully it all works out. And I think it would be a great asset for the township.
Agreed.
I have a comment.
We'll have to get you out on the course.
Sounds like a comment.
Chairman Marucci,
Yes, Mr. Mamakis.
I have a comment. I really do want to thank Ephraim for putting the effort in here and building a golf course for the township. Again, as Casey mentioned and everyone's mentioned, it's going to be a great asset and a great destination location for Old Township. Thank you, Ephraim.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And again, I want to focus just one that we're really trying to do it from little and more of an amenity as well. Even the idea of a miniature golf course, I'll take credit for it. It was mine. It brings kids in early. It's a family amenity. You don't have to be scratch golfer to enjoy miniature golf. And the goal here is to really have a community amenity that happens to be related to golf, but not only a golf course.
Now, when you say miniature golf, you're talking actual like windmills and clowns,
Oh, yeah.
not a par 3, like a pitch and putt.
No, really just a fun miniature golf course. Come on a Saturday, Sunday after school with your kids and get them a putter in their hands. And
Cool.
only good things can happen after that.
Okay. Great. Okay, Vina, do you want to close this out with any additional comments?
No, I think that's all. Thank you, Ephraim, for joining us. And we will be back again with a final concept in front of the planning board shortly.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay, thanks, Ephraim. Okay, Vina, is there anything else before we move on to the applications?
No, I think we're ready for the public hearing.
Okay. Okay, so the first application we have on the agenda is 01-2021P, and it's Brightpoint Housing LLC for preliminary and final site plan with C variances. And we have a representative here from Brightpoint.
Hello. Before I get started, someone has raised their hand, so I just want to make sure that they're addressed before I am. It's CRV Board A.
Yeah, but we're not taking.
Board A. Okay, Vina, I don't.
Raise their hands for what?
Joe, can I really, we haven't opened it up to public, so I'm.
Yeah, I don't
not-
see that, and we haven't opened it.
Correct. Yeah, there'll be a general public, these aren't public hearings that we just had. These were just presentations being made. And then there is a general public comment period at the very end of the meeting. And there will be questions of witnesses for the applications, as well as a opportunity to make public comment on each application separately during the hearing process. But there hasn't been any public hearing or any opportunity for the public to speak during this hearing yet.
Okay, so I'm assuming the hand raised is for the golf course and not for this coming application?
Excuse me, if I may, I'm the attorney for the subdivision application. It's actually, I was trying to see if you can elevate me. That's actually my video screen. I didn't know when the best time to approach you would be, so I raised my hand.
I'm sorry, which application?
The next application, the subdivision. I for some reason I can't get my video to work. It's on the other, it's under CRV Board A.
Okay, is this the 43 Oliver Ave?
That's correct.
Okay, and you're asking?
That's I am CRV Board A.
Mr. Chairman, I think he's, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think Mr. Lepari is asking if they can, the board will hear his application before
No.
housing.
I'm not asking to go first. I'm just asking if you could elevate CRV Board A when it's my turn.
Oh, elevate,
My video
sorry.
work.
When you said elevate, I thought you meant move up in the agenda.
That's
No.
what I thought too.
I'm sorry. I just want my video to be able to work. I'll turn it off until it's my turn to go.
I understand.
Sorry about that.
I just promoted you to be a panelist. I think it should work now. Can you please try?
It's working now.
Okay.
Thank you. Sorry for the
No problem.
sorry for the trouble, and thank you, Ms. Curley.
Recording in progress.
Hey, somebody's echoing horribly.
I think that might be Mr. Lepari again, joining in both. So I see he's taking care of that.
He's really making himself known here.
With that, I'll get started, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
So good evening, Amanda Curley from the law firm of Lentz, Goldman and Spitzer on behalf of the applicant, Brightpoint Housing LLC. The applicant is requesting preliminary and final major site plan approval with variances and waivers to build a 3-story building with 26 residential units. 15% will be set aside for affordable units. The ground floor is meant to serve as a basement level with amenity space and covered parking. Then the 2 upper floors will have residential units, and then on the roof, a passive recreation space is proposed. The subject property is located at 46 Route 34, Lot 2 in Block 10256, and is located in the AF apartment family zone. The property is just under 2 acres. It's heavily wooded and contains an existing single-family home that is a non-conforming use and not currently suitable for occupancy. The property is also constrained in its development due to the existence of steep slopes and critical steep slopes. The following bulk variances are required: minimum front yard setback, buffer from major arterial road, parking along major road, parking in established buffer, number of stories, and access. 3 out of the 6 variances are required due to the existence of steep slopes, and the relief is necessary to allow for development of the parcel with a permitted use while minimizing steep slope disturbance. The variance for building height is not for height in feet. It's for maximum number of stories. We comply with the required feet. You're allowed 30 feet. Our height is 27. However, given the existing elevations of the property, the rear side of the building is technically 3 stories, necessitating the relief, but the rest of the building will appear as a 2-story building with everything under grade, except for at the rear side. The 6th variance is for access. The property is located along Route 34, which is under the jurisdiction of the NJDOT or the New Jersey Department of Transportation. The NJDOT will only allow 1 curb cut, and the township ordinance requires 2. We cannot comply because the NJDOT has the jurisdiction there. The project otherwise complies with use, density, and floor area ratio, which is very important because it illustrates the building is not too dense or too many units. We comply with the ordinance requirements in that regard. A de minimis exception from the residential site improvement standards is also necessary. The plan before you provides for 46 spaces, 10 by 20 in size. RSIS requires 50 spaces, 9 by 18 in size. If the board finds it necessary, we're happy to comply with RSIS. We can give you the 50 spaces, 9 by 18, or we can keep the plan as is. Waivers are required for disturbance of steep slopes and critical steep slopes, minimum number of trees, and minimum landscaping and parking lot. All the other waivers requested, like the light poles, the apex angle, and the loading space, we just eliminated those. We're going to comply, and we're going to not need waivers for those. As to the waivers for steep slope and critical steep slope disturbance, over 85% of the proposed disturbance will not be located in the area of steep slopes, but it will occur within the required buffer area. What you'll see here tonight is testimony relating to how constrained the development will be and how the property is very constrained by these conditions. Indeed, if the applicant complied with all of your required setbacks as well as your steep slope buffers, no development could occur here. It is literally impossible to comply with all the standards set forth in the ordinance. So instead, the applicant is proposing redevelopment of this parcel with a permitted use that has affordable units that's compliant with density and will improve the site both visually and in terms of drainage. In terms of drainage, the new system will greatly improve the existing conditions by reducing runoff that currently drains off the steep slopes, causing erosion. All runoff from the development will be redirected onto Route 34, causing less erosion. And it's been a really long road to get to this application. The applicant has met with the township multiple times in pre-application meetings and has made revisions based on the township comments. We also met with our neighbors to the rear or the Spring Hill Village Condo Association. After we met with them, we completely redesigned our stormwater managing system because we were proposing to drain out the rear. We are no longer doing that. We are taking the water, we're putting it all into Route 34 into an existing drainage system. We will not be draining to Spring Hill Village or causing more water there. Indeed, I think the applicant has shown a real willingness to work with neighbors and the town to address concerns to the extent possible. And with that, I would like to call up my engineer, Paul Anderson.
Okay, thank you, Amanda.
Paul?
There he is. Okay. Actually, Mr. Chairman, if I may, I just want to make one quick note that Mr. Garcia has joined the meeting, Board Member Garcia, and he has been here the whole start of this application, so he will be eligible to vote. I meant to make that a note of that before we started this application. And let me see, I just got to get you on my screen. I'm sorry. So I swear you in. There you go. Mr. Anderson, do you raise your right hand? Do you swear the testimony you're going to give this evening is the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do.
And could you please state your name and spell your last name for the record?
Paul W. Anderson, Anderson.
All right, Paul, can you give me some of your background and qualifications as a professional engineer?
Yes, I have a Bachelor of Science in Civil Engineering from Clarkson University in 1983. I've been licensed as a professional engineer in the state of New Jersey since 1988.
I am the principal with Anderson Consulting Services. We prepare site plans and provide planning testimony for applications such as the one before you this evening. We did prepare the site plans for this application. I've testified in front of numerous boards throughout state and been accepted as an expert witness in civil and site engineering.
And so
My
accepted here as
license are in
well.
good standing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
All
you.
right, Paul, if you can you just go over the property, existing conditions, the proposal, and run us through the plan?
Okay. What do we do exhibit wise? Is this something that Vina, do you control it or do I control, or what's the?
You should be able to screen share. If you, in the middle of lower screen, it will say share screen green. And when you click on that, we'll be able to see your screen.
We
Yes.
actually require that you send the exhibits
We
to
did.
me so that
We did. Prior to the last hearing, exhibit A1, A2, and A3. You should
Okay,
have them.
That's okay. So Vina, so you will be putting them up for me?
yes, bear with me for a second because I don't have the older exhibit with me, but I'll need just a minute.
Vina, I can send it to you right now.
That will be easy.
I'm sure I have them.
Because I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to email it to myself from the drive, but if you have it handy, you can send it to me and I'll share that.
Great. There we go. And which email is best for you?
The township ID, V7 at Old Bridge.
2 and sending it over right this second. %.
I still don't have it.
I just emailed them to you as well.
Actually, I'm trying to pull it up from the drive directly, and it's I didn't get yours or Amanda's email.
Is there any way I could just pull it up? I mean, you have it on file.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to do.
But I already have it on my screen, if that's okay. It's what was sent.
Months ago.
Amanda, the exhibits were dated June 1, 21?
They think they're, yeah, that's them.
Yeah, okay. Just want to make sure I still have the same ones that we're all talking about. That's all.
So it's just an existing aerial. If I could just pull it up, you guys were definitely sent it. I'll send them one more time. And this time I CC'd you, Joe. They're larger files, so that might be why. Yes,
Yeah,
that's
probably.
it.
I think I emailed it to myself. We can proceed.
Great. Paul?
Thank you. So this is the application for Brightpoint Housing. As Amanda mentioned, it's 46 Route 34 in Old Bridge, block 10256, lot 2, and has 1.893 acres. You can see the property line outlined in yellow on this aerial exhibit. I have no idea what that red mark is. It's not on my original, but it's there. It's located in the AF zone, the apartment family zone, which permits up to 14 units per acre. The property does not meet the 6-acre minimum requirement in the AF zone, and it also does not meet the 300-foot frontage requirement in the AF zone. So those are two existing nonconformities associated with this project. As you can see on the exhibit, it fronts on Route 34. Route 9 is towards the bottom of the sheet, approximately 1,400 feet away. Garden State Parkway is approximately 1.8 miles to the east. From here, immediately to the north is the Madison Gardens Apartments. And immediately to the south, I'll call it south and west, is the Spring Hill Village apartments or condos. The property itself is has a house, which you can see underneath their proposed building, and a garage on a more mildly sloped section of the property. But around it, if I could go to the second exhibit, if you don't mind, please. A2.
Mr. Anderson, just for the record, you prepared these exhibits?
Yes, that's correct. All right, so not entirely visible here, but basically this property has a level area that extends. Can you see my cursor, or is that something?
Oh, you cannot because you're not screen sharing. Oh, is that you?
There it is. Yep, I see it.
Yeah, that's not me, but
Okay.
That is me.
Thank you, Vina.
I will try, Paul, I will try to follow.
So basically the property has a level area in where the building is proposed and then where the parking lot is proposed. And that is an area that the slopes are under 15%. In fact, 50% of the slopes on site are under 15% non-regulated. There's that area. There's a small area in the rear of the site. There's a small area in the front of the site. The remainder outside of the building limits slopes down steeply between a good portion of it to the west and to the south are between 15 and 30, and there's 30% in that category, and 20% of the site is over 30%. So it drops off fairly rapidly outside this level area. So when we were looking to design this project, we thought that the most important thing would be to develop it in the flatter areas of this property. So that's what we have done. We've put this building on the flat area and the parking lot in the flat area, and it just bumps up to very slightly to the steep slopes on the perimeter. So in doing that, though, it creates a circumstance where we do not comply with the buffer requirements that Amanda had mentioned before in her introduction, which is the buffer from the arterial highway, the front yard setback, the parking lot setback from the in the buffer to the adjacent residential. All of those items are now pushed or developed because if we were to take this building and push it to the rear of the property or to the left on this screen, approximately 75 feet, and then also over approximately 50 feet to the lower side, we would be right in the heart of the steep slopes of the site, and the development would be very damaging to the environment. So
So Paul, just to confirm, the reason we're requesting these variances is a hardship because the property really is only developable to the front.
that's correct. The property is really only developable in a reasonable way in the area that we show it, on the level area in the front of the lot. And with-
If I could just ask a quick question, what is the difference in elevation from the finished parking lot to Route 34? I know it might be early, but I'm just for my own
Well, it
edification.
depends on Route 34 goes down approximately 5%, I believe.
Yeah, at the driveway opening.
At the driveway opening, we are,
Just approximate.
yeah, I understand. It's 109 at Route 34, and the finished floor is at 118,
So 9 feet.
9 feet higher for the finished floor. The
Okay.
garage underneath is at 105, so that's 4 feet down below the street.
Okay, thank you.
And Paul, just to confirm, if we were to comply with the front yard setbacks and then also the steep slope setbacks, would this property be able to be developed with anything?
If we were to comply with steep slopes and the buffer requirements, we would not have any usable area left to develop the property. We would be zoning it in utility.
Great. So why don't you continue your presentation?
Yeah, sorry for my interruption.
No problem. So with that in mind, the applicant is proposing this building with 2 stories of residential living over top of 1 story of parking. The parking is obviously accessed by Route 34 through the 1 driveway, down the north side, and then down around the back of the building where you enter the back of the garage for the garage under. And that at that location is the only location where the building actually appears to be 3 stories. The remainder is going to appear as a 2-story building. We have 26 units, which meets the density requirement, and the total floor area meets the floor area requirement of the AF zone. One of the reasons, as Amanda mentioned, is that we have 1 access to Route 34 is because the DOT doesn't permit us. So again, when we get to the planning aspects, that is actually a hardship because we can't meet that requirement due to other regulatory considerations. We propose 46 parking spaces in total, 10 by 20 in size to meet the ordinance requirement. That is the right number, but RSIS requires 50 parking spaces. RSIS also dictates that the parking spaces can be 9 by 18. So if we were to put 9 by 18 parking spaces on the site, we could meet the RSIS requirements. So in our view, it's really the board's choice whether you want to provide 50 at 9 by 18 or the 46 with the 10-foot wide spaces. And we're okay either way. It doesn't really in a significant way change the layout that you're seeing in front of you.
So Paul, just very quickly, that loading space that's on this exhibit has been eliminated, correct? Because it's not required by ordinance?
The loading space still shows on our plan. That's what we think that's where people would actually do unloading, but because we cannot comply with the loading zone size requirements, and this zone does not require a loading space, we're technically not requesting a loading space on here. Maybe it's more for, in this case, for demonstration as to where tenants might actually pull their moving van when they're moving into the building.
Great.
But other than that, we will not be proposing this going forward.
And affordable units are going to be proposed as a part of this application.
That's correct.
You can continue.
Also in the back corner, there's the dumpster and recycling enclosure. We have done a turning template for a 21-foot single unit 2-axle vehicle garbage truck to come into the site, and it easily comes in and maneuvers to where the dumpster is. In this case, the dumpster is over where the loading space is shown now. This is a little bit older exhibit. Hasn't been updated. We just flopped the location of the dumpsters over to where the loading space is. And so it can easily make that movement. The project proposes new sewer and water and gas connections. The gas and water easy connections right outside onto Route 34. The sewer has to be via a pump station in the building, a forest main up to the terminal manhole up by Anchor Boulevard. And then we propose a stormwater management system. And I don't know if, do you have the ability to pull up our recently submitted plans?
And yeah, Paul, when you address this, I want you to talk about drainage now and how we're going to be improving it and our discussions with the neighborhood association.
Correct. Okay, on that sheet, just to take one step back, on this sheet here, which is SP2, you can see the truck turning movements for the 21 foot long 2-axle garbage truck, which would be from a private hauler to pick up garbage in the site. And also shows the new dumpster location, which is slightly different than what we had on the colorized exhibit that we were talking to just a moment ago. Now we get back to the stormwater. If I can go to SP4, please.
And I'm sorry, what we just had on the screen, was that a page from the?
That was from a page of the recently submitted plans.
Okay, thank you. I just want to make sure I understand.
Mm-hmm.
The most substantial change, Paul, to the plans was that we redesigned the stormwater management system, correct?
That's correct. We had a meeting with the neighbors, as you had indicated, Amanda, and they were concerned, even though that we met the state standards with regard to rate and recharge and so forth, that eventually the water would get, the volume of water would increase down to them. And they indicated they have some difficulties with water currently, and they asked us to investigate alternates. In the beginning, we had not connected to Route 34 because we had some difficulty identifying where the Route 34 drainage system went from and to. There's an inlet directly in front of the property, and but it has a pipe that comes inward towards the site, and we could not find the end point of it. So since we couldn't find the end point of it, we designed a system that discharged to the rear and met the standards. But hearing their concerns, we pulled back and we did a test in the field during one of the larger rainfalls that we had recently with dye tablets into that inlet on the on Route 34. And we found the dye goes basically down the street. There must be a drainage system that runs behind the curb that is buried, not visible somewhere there, but it eventually gets to the bottom of the hill down by the commercial development at the on the bottom of the hill on Route 34, where it goes into the stream.
So the proposed system will actually improve drainage by directing it to Route 34, and it would be actually helpful to the neighbors to the rear and an improvement over existing conditions.
That is correct. Currently, the water goes in 3 directions, 2 of them being towards the neighbors and 1 towards Route 34. And what we've done is we've taken all of the water from the roof and from the parking lot, all the impervious surfaces, and directed it to the detention system, where we recharge it into the ground and have an overflow that goes to the Route 34 system. So the runoff that used to hit the existing house and run towards the back of the property will no longer be there, flowing down the steep slopes and eroding that existing slope. It'll just, all that water will be taken forward to Route 34.
Great. And can you talk a little more about the steep slopes and what we're doing and what mitigation was looked at, and just go into more detail over the steep slopes?
I will. Vina, can we get the other plans? I haven't seen the plans come up.
I only have A1, A2, and A3 from Amanda. I do not have A4.
Oh, okay.
Oh, it's not A4, Vina. It's the plans that we submitted. You should have a digital copy.
I just had that on the screen.
Yeah. It's the full plan set that was sent.
Yeah, that if we could do that, I'd appreciate
Great.
it. And we could scroll down. And we stop there. That is the detention system that we have. It has the roof leaders coming in. It picks up inlet in the back, goes to a storm filter. And then after the storm filter cleans the storm water of 80% of the suspended solids, and it goes into the recharge system, and then it discharges into Route 34. Technically, the state standards require us to investigate green technology, but with the steep slopes on this property, as can be clearly seen on this plan, there's not a lot of room for things like rain gardens or detention basins or recharge basins that are on the surface. So I don't know that it is a practicality, whether it's something that we can achieve to have green technology work on this project. So currently we have storm filters as the water quality device. And if we could go down just a few more sheets to the slope map. There we go. All right, so this clearly illustrates what I was speaking about before. The white area in the circle where the building is, those are all the non-regulated slopes. And you can see that our building goes up to the steep slopes, but not too far into them. And so we have a little bit of disturbance in the steep slopes, but not very much. So we built in that one level area. Now, total, if you look at the square footage of disturbance of steep slopes in the 15 to 29.9% category, we have 4,811 square feet of disturbance. That's the light gray tone that you're seeing on your screen. Most of that is in the front, but some of it is back by the dumpster. And then secondly, we have 877 square feet of the 30% plus slopes, which is represented on the screen by the darker shading. And so we've really managed to stay significantly out of those slopes.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Paul, but a lot of in the critical steep slope area is pavement, not building.
Where we're proposing disturbance in those areas, it's pavement in the back. It's not going to be grass. In fact, we have retaining walls that surround a good portion of the site on the north side and on the aisle of the parking lot. And then in the rear behind the dumpster, there's a retaining wall that cuts off disturbance quickly with not a fill slope. And then we have on the south side, the building itself, the building wall itself is the clean cutoff to the slope. So we don't have to have a fill slope on the outside or vegetative disturbance on the outside of, outside where it takes to build the building. Grade wise, we have a grade on, say, for example, on the steep slope on the south side of about 114 or 113, and the garage itself is 105.5. So the foundation for this building is going to be down around elevation 102, 101. I don't know that it's been designed yet, but typically that's where it would be for that garage elevation. And that is well below the existing grade at that point. So I have no concern about stability of this building because it's kind of built into the slope as opposed to, and as opposed to, on top of a steep slope. There's not going to be any pressure where it's, it's punching out or having a soil failure, because that grade doesn't occur until halfway down to the property line. Let's see, what else do I have here?
Landscaping and lighting.
Yeah, if we can go to the next sheet, please. Or 2 sheets beyond. Landscape plan. Well, one up, I think. Yes, one up.
That's it. Thank you.
All right, so the project does propose a significant landscape plan. As part of this project, we are actually removing 34 trees. The tree replacement plan does call for 51, but there's really not any space to put them in because we're trying to minimize disturbance outside, on the steep slopes. But we have managed to plant 32 trees, and we have 10 shade trees, some along the Route 34, others along the rear of the parking lot, just behind the retaining wall, behind the 6 parking spaces in the dumpster. We have 5 evergreen trees and 17 ornamental trees that are primarily located, or 14 of them are located along the northern property line behind the retaining wall to add additional buffering to the neighboring properties. And then we have a significant number of foundation plants, 237 shrubs, and 601 perennials, grasses, and ground covers. Some of the comments in the, excuse me, in the latest review letter was identifying the height of the, how high the mature shrubs would be along the south side. And we have hydrangeas in that area that will be a mature height between 8 and 15 feet high. And I believe the viburnum is going to be equally going to be up to 6 to 8 feet high. So we do have a significant number of shrubs on that side of the building and throughout the site that get a significant height at maturity. The heights that you see in the chart are the planted heights. They're not the mature height. So when they're called out 24 to 30 inches, that's at planting, not a mature height. And if we could go down one to the landscape plan, please.
The lighting plan.
Yeah, lighting plan, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
All right, so the lighting plan is fairly straightforward. It has 5 pole mounted fixtures. The A fixtures on the A and B fixtures located on the north property line. They're 14 feet high. They're LED lights and focused downward. We also have 6 wall mounted lights, and they're between 9 and 18 feet high. And that is because we want to have the lights attached to the building at the same elevation point on the building itself, and the existing ground falls off. So the G light over the front entrance is at 9 feet high, but as you go back to the D light that is in the rear of the building by the garage, that's 18 feet high. So that's because the existing grade has dropped off that much. But when you look at them on the building, they'll all be on the same height on the building.
And Paul, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's showing 0-foot candles in the area of the Spring Hill Neighborhood Association, meaning light will not be spilling onto them.
Correct. I mean, it's well before their property, the light will be cut off and they are downward focused. So there shouldn't be any light shining directly on them. There's also the existing trees that are going to remain in place that will buffer it even further. We do cut off fairly nicely at the property lines around a half a foot candle. And we have an average intensity in the parking lot of 1.76 foot candles, which is more than adequate light and not overly bright. So I think the lighting meets the standards of the ordinance. And I believe that's all the engineering direct testimony that I have. And I'd be happy to take any questions that the board or the public has.
Okay, I have an initial question regarding the building height. I know max height allowed is 30 feet and you're proposing 27. Where do you pull that height from on the property?
I do an average grade around the building. So I take a series of points around the building and develop what is the average grade. And then from the highest point on the roof to measuring point on the roof to the average grade is where I get the 27 feet.
Okay, so obviously when you're down on 34, it's considerably higher.
Mary, they can see you.
No, it would be taller in the back. It's actually shorter on 34.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Board professionals, Nicole or Vina, do we have any input?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I'm going through the report and I was trying to follow Mr. Anderson to see if he addressed all the comments. I think what was highlighted in this, obviously from testimony, was that the drainage has been revised to be directed towards 34. And my engineers from my office did go out to the site and did locate a structure that was behind the existing B inlet that's located on Route 34. So it is plausible that there might be some sort of parallel. What I don't feel comfortable is with the verbiage that was provided in the report, and certainly understandably so, that there would need to be some sort of investigation to determine. But when reading the report, it said, and I'm going to read this for you just so you can get where I'm coming from. The discharge will be to the state drainage system in 34. The path and size of the state drainage system was not able to be ascertained from field survey or from NJDOT records to determine where the system drained to. A dye test was performed by putting dye into the inlet, which was part of Mr. Anderson's testimony. He then goes on to say, in front of the property during the rainstorm, the system was found to discharge at the bottom of the hill into a stream through the inlet system in the street. So even today, I hear at the bottom of the hill. So I guess where is it that you saw downstream the dye? Where did you find it? I'm so curious.
So I put the dye tablets in the inlet in front of the property.
Yep.
I waited about 10 minutes. I started driving around trying to find out where I might see it. And I went down to the, what is apparent, I believe a drugstore just south of the property on where Spring Hill and 34 fork.
Yeah.
And there's an inlet that is a pair of inlets on either side of Route 34 that are about where the driveway is onto Route 34. And at that point, if you look in that inlet, you found that you started seeing the dye. When you went across the street to the other inlet in that pair, it was coming in there and then exiting out the back of that inlet, which it went down into a stream or wetland area, you know, in that depression.
So where the traffic light is at the intersection of Spring Hill and 34, are you saying that the inlet that is on the northbound side of 34 opposite this property is where the pair of inlets are?
Well,
Vina, do me a favor. I had emailed you an aerial. Maybe we could put it up. I wanted to talk about it only because, again, the report says downhill. So I need to know, and then it further says since the only pipe leaving the inlet was directed towards the subject property, we can only hypothesize that there is a buried manhole in the right of way and a system that runs behind and parallel to the road curbing. But like, I want to see, where is it? If it runs parallel, right, where is it that is anticipated that you're saying it crosses 34? Is that what I'm hearing?
It does, yes, it crosses 34.
It crosses 34 at the location. So if you look at this aerial, right, you see that where the word Spring Hill Road is, right?
Yes.
You see how Spring Hill Road sort of, veers towards Route 34. And then at that location, there is a traffic light. Is it?
You see where the parking lot is for the commercial, for the drugstore?
Yep.
See where the two light colored cars are parked?
Okay, on the top of the page or towards
Yes, on the top of the page.
Yes.
In that vicinity, on the gutter line, on the curb line of Route 34 is an inlet.
Okay.
And then there's one directly across, and it comes down, it comes into that inlet from the parking lot side. Again, supporting my hypothesis that it's a parallel system behind it, what's at the curb line. And then it comes directly across Route 34 and discharges.
Okay. There was several comments that I had on the drainage, right? But one of the things that I would, did you have a conversation with DOT on whether you would be permitted then to connect to this inlet, and you would then have to investigate clearly where these pipes go?
Agreed. Where do they go, and is it going anywhere else other than where you picked up the dye?
You would see it if it was going anywhere else.
Right.
Well, if you found it, yeah.
Yeah. So they don't have records of this system, but it's not uncommon for them to, if they think they're going to widen the road, to build the drainage system out at what they're thinking the proposed curb line is.
There's a pavement rehabilitation project going on it's from Old Bridge Township to Colts Neck. It's a pavement rehabilitation, and it's also drainage improvements, ADA improvements at intersection, traffic signal improvements, advanced warning signs, et cetera, et cetera. Have you reached out to other groups in DOT to get information? Because I'm sure that as part of that plan application, they must have data on what they found along 34.
Yep.
I
reached out to the DOT and I got them to send me all the plans that they have on file in Trenton.
Okay.
For this roadway in this section, and none of them show any easements coming onto our property for a drainage discharge in the property. They don't show any inlets, any inlet system where we have found it in the field. So there does have to be some kind of reconstruction of what is actually out there. They have not been, at the time I called them, it was difficult to get a hold of them because they weren't in the office.
Yeah.
And so we may have some more luck with that going forward, and particularly if they do have a new contract but if they're only resurfacing, they might not explore it that much. But
it's not just resurfacing. There's drainage improvements. There's there's quite a bit of work going on there. I think the issue though is, certainly I think the board would look favorably on a discharge point other than discharging it in the rear. So certainly this is more favorable. I just want to make sure it is doable, right? If they don't find their system, like how do you know? I have to surmise that DOT would want you to do a downstream analysis of the pipe system and what you're discharging into it to ensure that the pipe size are adequate.
Well, they may want that. Right now, we do have to make a DOT application for access, and because we will be showing on that plan a drainage connection, we will have a drainage element to that, and
Yes.
I will have to demonstrate to them that the amount of flow that I'm putting into the state system is less than and meets the reduction requirements of the state standard into their system. So I have done that. The system
Okay.
is designed to have a reduced flow be below what actually goes to the DOT system today, so that when we go to the DOT, there will not be a problem with actually gaining their approval on it. So
Right, and I do agree that you are, meeting reductions for off-site, but the amount of water that is going to that location now is different than what you're going to be proposing. So for example, the
we
area,
are
the
going to
entire,
be, I'm sorry, we're going to be proposing less water going to that point than goes there today.
well, wait a second. What I'm saying is the area that you have, right? The area of the site, right? You are now directing the roof leaders, you're directing the parking areas, you're directing, part of the property that doesn't go there now, you are directing it. You are putting an under drain system in there to slow that discharge. So I agree that the discharge will slow, right? But the area that you are draining to that inlet is larger than the area you are draining there now, because there is a divide, and that existing divide runs at the front portion of your property. So what I'm saying is just so this applicant knows and the board knows, part of the compliance resolution, should the board vote on this application and look favorably on this application, is NJDOT's concurrence by a permit for this application. That permit, that access permit, would have a drainage component. That access permit wouldn't permit them to tie into the system until their due diligence with DOT is done. So I'm just advising the board that right now it is a theory and an unknown that seems to be proven by a dye test, but certainly the end result is DOT has to give them permission to tie into there, so then what I surmise is, should that not happen, then this applicant would have to come back to the board for an alternate drainage design if that is not permitted by DOT. There was also a comment we had made on the green infrastructure.
Nicole, I'm sorry, Nicole, can I just interrupt, just so that for the record purposes, and I have what the condition that you had referenced, but just for exhibit purposes, since we are utilized that one exhibit that was put on, let's just for record keeping purposes, mark that as board 1. And it's an aerial of the subject property, and it looks like the Spring Hill area. And just to clarify, Nicole, did you get that? Was that from a Google map? It looked like I saw the G.
Yeah. It was a Google map imagery, and it just took me 2 minutes just to snip it, because I was trying to ascertain whether downhill was down Spring Hill Road or down 34, because it was not clear in the drainage report that they had provided. And when we were out there on Spring Hill Road, we did look at the next intersection and the inlets down there and didn't see any pipes that were coming from that direction. However, we did not go on to 34 because we didn't think that it was crossing that way, but that was earlier today.
Understood. I just wanted to, just for clarify for the record, that what the exhibit is. So I didn't interrupt. Apologize, please.
No problem. There was a comment under green infrastructure where NJDEP has come out with these new rules, and they are strongly trying to push green infrastructure. Now, the testimony that I heard today was that because of the steep slopes and because of the orientation, because of the limitations of the property, it would be hard to do that. I am asking that the stormwater management design shall be revised to provide a green infrastructure BMP to address stormwater runoff quality standards, as the storm filter one that is proposed is not on that list. And so I ask that that be done. There are several comments that were added in as far as the drainage report was concerned. We had a bit more time this go around than we did when the application had first come to the board. So we were trying to button up on each of the comments. What I'm hearing tonight is that the applicant has reviewed those comments and will address each one of them as part of compliance resolution, should the board look favorably on this application or if this application moves forward. Is that my understanding, Mr. Anderson?
That is correct.
Also, as a part of housekeeping, and I know that Mr. Proska is on here and he's our traffic consultant. There was for the garbage truck, there was a designation that you used, and forgive me if I'm supposed to know this, but we typically use AASHTO vehicle class designation when we pull templates out for turning templates, and my office was trying to Google that SPR6 that you were using for the garbage truck and couldn't find anything on that. I ask if that's not an AASHTO designation, that you update that so that we could follow along.
I couldn't find an AASHTO designation for it, but it is like a single unit. It's not it's a 2-axle vehicle that's 21 feet long, and it isn't like an AASHTO WB50 or that kind of classification. I couldn't find that.
Okay.
The name I gave it was simply part of the turning radius program that we have in house, and that's by AutoCAD.
Okay.
Also, please note, we do have a traffic consultant.
Yes. And as we do too, he'll wait for that testimony. As far as the parking spaces, I'm going to leave that for our traffic consultant as well. But I would suggest the more parking spaces with the lesser size, using the 9x18 RSIS. I would support a waiver from our 10x20 to provide more spaces, because I feel that there are no other places for people to park, and it's better to have more spaces on site than to have less. And so long as I heard that Mr. Anderson would comply with the other comments in the report, I'm going to say for now I have no further comments.
Okay, thank you. Vina, do you have any input?
Yes, I do. In the planning review section, there were a couple of variances that are required, but Nicole actually talked about the parking already. Based on the RSI standard, 50 spaces are required. So a de minimis exception is required for this one because only 46 spaces are provided. I do agree with her comment that maybe 9x18, the professionals will support the 9x18 if you can get those additional spaces. On the bulk table, there are a couple of variances with minimum front yard, the buffer, the landscape ratio variance is no longer required, but the buffer from major arterials, the parking buffer, the parking along major arterials, parking in established buffer along residential zone, the site access, and number of stories. So there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 variances. With the loading stall, I had a comment in my review memo that I just want to share that snippet. Give me 1 second. So in this corner, this one was shown as a 10x25 space, but then this was shaded. So I wasn't sure if this is the proposed loading space, then it requires a waiver from the size requirements, because section 250-77B1 has a requirement for loading stalls, and it requires 60 feet stall length. Also, I was curious to know what is the purpose of the loading space, and I didn't hear that in the testimony. So
yeah, we actually eliminated it. Paul testified to it. So Paul, you can address that again.
Yeah, so what we said is that this zone does not require a loading space.
Right.
We cannot provide the 60-foot loading space, so we are going to eliminate that. The hatched area is simply to keep people from parking where the garbage truck might want to do their K-turn.
Perfect. So which means you will update your plans for compliance review.
Correct.
Right?
That's correct.
I think the landscaping comments were all addressed. There is no waiver required on the landscaping. I believe most of my comments other than that were addressed. The variances are required, and I will wait for the planner to offer justifications. I did not hear anything about the affordable housing, but I believe your planner would cover that, correct, Amanda?
We did put that on the record. We're going to do 15% set aside.
And 13% of it will be very low income, correct?
We will follow the COA rules.
That is 13%. That's all for me.
Okay, and forgive me, I just have a quick question, and I can't find it. I seem to remember coming across something when I did a review of the memo regarding sanitary force main, and I can't seem to find the comments. Can someone address that?
Paul?
I think the comment was that we need to have a more detailed design of the force main, where it goes up the side of the road. The property, the survey for the property only extends out a certain limit, and we have to take the force main to the top of the hill to that manhole. And so that would be necessary prior to start of any construction, the actual design and approval of that force main location.
Okay, Nicole, does that sound about right?
Well, that would be force main for sanitary.
Correct.
That would be the Old Bridge Municipal Utilities Authority. Like, we only do the stormwater. We don't take care of sanitary water.
Okay, yeah, I just seem to remember coming across the comment, and it was stuck in my head, and I just kind of wanted to clarify it. Okay. Any questions from the board members?
Mr. Chair, if I may, before you jump to the board, this is Mr. Praska, the board traffic consultant on behalf of Mr. Dargy. Just a few items and questions. So we had issued a letter August 3rd, a few items in there. I just want to get some clarification on is a few things. One was that there's a few items related to the grading on the driveway that exceeds our SIS requirements. And we asked that a driveway profile be provided with the Route 34 cross sections. Will you be able to comply with that? Mr.
We
Anderson?
will. Yeah, we will. It's probably going to be necessary for DOT anyway. So yes, we will do that.
Okay, great. And the second one was, I believe in your testimony, you mentioned a retaining wall on the northern side of the property that runs parallel to the driveway. We asked that you take a look at that in terms of any guide rail needed for that in terms of vehicle protection, and if it's needed, will it be provided?
We won't need it on the north side because that wall's up from the parking lot. We'll need it on the I guess the west side and the back of the parking lot. We will need some kind of protection.
Okay, and we asked that meet necessary requirements in terms of vehicle protection for that.
Of course.
And in terms of site distance and sight lines, we asked for a sight line plan for the access to make sure we have adequate sight lines out to Route 34. Sure you're okay with that.
I am, yeah. I mean, it's basically a vertical tangent both directions, and it's a straight road. So I mean, it's obviously compliant. So
great. And I think the last clarification, I don't know if I heard testimony on it, was is there any sort of identification signage that's going to be provided along Route 34? And the reason for my question is if there is, would that impede any sort of sight lines down there?
yeah, we don't have anything at this point proposed. If they at some future point want to do it, it would have to be zone compliant and would also have to not create any site distance issues.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think that's all I have at this point.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Praska. Do we have any additional testimony?
From Paul, no, but it's up to, I don't know what your process is, if you open it up now to neighbors, because I see a hand raised.
Yes.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I think given the public's concern, I know procedurally we handle it two different ways depending on the application. We open up to the public after each witness, and sometimes we'll call witnesses and open up to the public. But I think given the circumstances here, it's probably most beneficial if we open up to the public after each witness and have the questions. But just so the public's aware, procedurally, this is only a time for questioning of the witness based on their testimony given. This is not a time for making statements or testimony. That there will be a time for that at the end of the application, but this time is just for questions of the witness and based on the testimony that was presented to the board.
For the engineering?
Yes, just the traffic engineer, I mean, the general engineer at this time. There'll be a time to questioning each of the witnesses separately.
Okay, and we have a hand raised.
Chairman Marucci,
Yes, Mr. Lauer.
yeah. You started opening up to the board members, but then the traffic engineer jumped in there. Are you still going to open up to the board members first?
I agree, Chairman Marucci. Board members first.
Yes.
Okay, let's open it up to the board members. My apologies.
That's okay. I have a couple questions for Mr. Anderson. Was there a test pit done on the site to find out what type of soil and how deep the water table was?
Yes, there was a geotechnical report as part of this project that did a number of borings, and the water elevation under the building area is approximately 99 to 100 seasonal high. Elevation 99 or 100, and the floor elevation of the garage is 105.5 as proposed. And then in the parking lot where we proposed the recharge basin, there was no groundwater encountered in a 20-foot test boring. And other areas of the site, it seems like the water tends to level out at 98, 99, 100 in that range as seasonal high, depending on where you go.
And what type of soil did you run into?
There's a thick layer. I did not do the geotechnical test myself. It was done by SOAR testing, and I have a copy of it. So in my review of their report, there was a thick layer of sand that extended down from just below the surface, probably 2 or 3 feet down to maybe 15 feet down. And that is the area where the recharge is going to be. That's the area where the building will be founded. It should have good porosity. And then much deeper, there is a deeper clay soil, probably a little more limiting.
Okay, thank you. And you're proposing a basement / parking garage.
Yeah.
In your opinion, is it a more critical condition being so close to the slope, or the same or less than a regular footing?
I'm not sure I understand your question.
Well, if you did a regular footing, okay, you wouldn't be as deep as a basement / parking garage. And
Yes.
you're hugging the critical slope. You're encroaching on the critical slope area.
Right.
So, in your opinion, is a basement a closer danger to anything that might happen in the future versus a regular footing?
I think it's a better solution, actually, because it's much deeper. So it's bearing on something at an elevation that's down maybe around 100 or 101. And the grade outside the building is at 112, so it's 12 feet in the ground. So it's not going to have a shear failure. It's not going to punch out the the soil because it's so deep in the ground already. So it's affecting a ground that doesn't daylight until.
So in your
halfway off the property.
opinion, it's okay.
Yes, I think it's a fine design. It's not going to impact the slope in any way. I think it's going to be a very stable situation.
And I have another question, being that you mentioned landscaping. I guess I can ask a question about that.
Yeah.
I notice you have these large shade trees shown on here, but on that site, weren't there a few heritage trees that there was no mention, you made no mention of? And I'd like to know what's going to happen to them. There's at least one, but I thought there might be three.
There may be. I think there's one that actually fell down in front of the house recently.
Yeah, I saw that one, but I wasn't sure if that was counted as one of the three.
I think it was. Yeah, I think you're right. I don't know the disposition of the heritage trees. I know we did move the influence circle from previous comments farther forward to make it less impactful.
Well,
but, most of the trees in the back are all small. I'm just looking at the tree plan now.
Well, I mean, we have an ordinance to protect them, and I might be wrong, but I think the council has to give approval to take down those trees. So it would be nice to know what's going to happen, or are they just doomed?
I believe Gary's on the line.
We have Mr. Lavallo on the line, and he can probably answer that question.
Oh, okay. Hi, Gary.
Hello, panel, and Mr. Chair. Ed Lauer is correct that the ordinance does require council approval of any heritage trees. The heritage tree that fell in the front was not counted, or once they fall or are dead, we do not count them. But traditionally, heritage trees that are not in good condition or of a species that is not conducive to the site and that will not survive under the conditions, we don't allow those to be counted as heritage trees. It's the ones that that will contribute to the site is what we use. So that fallen tree was not counted, and there are and anything within the exempt area of that circle. Any heritage tree in there does not count toward the exemption. That's a completely separate ordinance that has to be dealt with separately. So if there's any heritage trees in the exempt area, they are not exempt.
All right, we will have to review that and see whether we need council approval or not. I don't have that information for you this evening.
I don't think we're finishing up tonight anyway, so at the next hearing, we'll be prepared to answer those questions.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions from any of the board members regarding this testimony?
I have some questions, Mr. Mamakis.
Okay, Steve.
A couple of them. One, what are the setbacks that are being proposed to shield the surrounding residents?
The setbacks to the property line or setback to the residents?
Setbacks to the residents.
Well, I have the setbacks to the property lines. I have 50.3 to the front and 59.2 to one side and to the south side, and 55.8 to the north side. I know that the houses are well beyond that. And then to the rear, we are 220 feet to the rear property line, and the buildings in in Spring Hill are well beyond that. But I don't have surveys of those adjacent building locations, so I don't have an accurate number for you, Stephen.
Okay, next one, how far is the driveway to the actual Spring Hill intersection traffic light?
I'm gonna have to give you an estimate on that one. It's probably about 300 feet. That's just
My question, about 300 feet?
About, yes.
Nicole, is there a standard on the county road that has to be about 500 feet to any other, or egress to get in and out?
Mr. Mamakis, you're talking about the distance of the driveway to the
Yeah,
property line?
driveway has to have like from the county perspective, it has to
No.
have about a 500-foot, I guess, egress or in and out.
No.
Come into that driveway.
The access point is governed by NJDOT, and they would have to put an access permit into NJDOT, and that's the distance from the property line to where the opening of the driveway, they govern that distance. And then they govern the distance between that driveway and the next driveway opening.
And because the one that's on 34 that's being developed now, I guess it comes across some of our property, our homeowner association property. I recall them needing about a 500-foot lead in. And question to Paul, how close is the next driveway? If you're able to tell me that as well.
I don't have that, but I do know that the driveway location that we proposed meets the DOT setback from requirement from our property line. So that's what they look at, the minimum distance that it has to be, and we meet or exceed that. It's the driveway to the north is the controlling one.
And I guess my last question is, how many waivers are we looking for the application at this point in time?
Waivers? Hold on. Design waivers, 20% parking landscape. And 10-foot backup area, which is inside the garage. And those are the two that we require.
Okay.
Or do you mean the entire application?
The entire application.
The entire application.
Yeah, well, we do not require the apex angle or the pole height.
And we do know, and if the board wants us to, we do not need the RSIS waiver.
Right. And we don't require the waiver for the loading space because we're not going to provide the loading space. So the answer to your question is 2, I believe.
Steep slope disturbance, critical steep slope,
Those
trees,
are waivers, okay.
landscaping. If we do give the 50 spaces as requested, we'll need a waiver for the 10 by 20. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or 6. Paul, are we doing the backup area?
We don't have a 10-foot backup area. It's in the garage. So that would have to require internal architectural changes to get 10 foot there. But generally speaking, it wouldn't be necessary. It'll function without it.
1, 2. So I believe it'd be 5 or 6.
All right. And the last question is, I'm sorry. Because of the way Route 34, as you're coming south, dips right down where that driveway would be. And also, as they come out of Spring Hill Road to make a left or up 34 going north, what's going to be put in place for that left-hand turn in? Is there, I didn't see anything on there, or I didn't have my glasses on to see. It was kind of small. Because I'm a little bit concerned about that 300 foot from the traffic light as they come over that hill. Those are just some concerns of mine. I travel that almost every day as I go around the town.
So Stephen, maybe when our traffic engineer gets on, you can discuss the access and traffic safety. I'm sure she'll have some discussion about that in her direct testimony.
Perfect,
She'll
thank you.
speak to the NJDOT jurisdiction.
Okay, thank you. No more questions. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Steve. Anybody else before we open it up to the public?
Yeah, Dean, I have a couple things. I'll wait on. I mean, I have a concern when it comes to the traffic as well. I mean, that's a really very heavily traveled road, but I can wait on that until we have the traffic folks kind of weigh in. One of the concerns I have, and I think Mr. Lavallo shares it as well, is the taking down of the number of trees. I think taking them down on the slopes, we're putting a lot of impermeable land mass on top of that now. Is all of this addressed? Because with the amount of rain we've had, we've seen the amount of flooding, not only, pretty much throughout the entire state. Putting concrete on top of land that's already pretty, that's already sending water downhill. Is all of this addressed? I don't know, Nicole and Vina, from our township perspective, are we okay with the fact that we're putting this non-permeable on top of this land and now potentially pushing water down? Because it seems like, at least from what I'm hearing, the drainage doesn't seem to be squared away yet.
So, Councilman De Palma, the applicant's engineer is capturing the runoff that would be gathered from any of the impervious areas, and he's putting it in this underground system. So there will be obviously rain that still falls in the sloped area, in these vegetated wooded areas, that would still run off down slope as it does today. But anything as part of this development would then go into this closed underground detention system, and then from the design that the engineer has posed would then go into this inlet and cross eventually Route 34. So the impervious cover that's added wouldn't affect the neighborhood downstream of, or downslope, I should say, of this development, as he is capturing everything. And one of the additional comments that we had added was, to ensure that the roof leaders are shown on the plan, so we could ensure that they are also tied into this drainage system as well.
Yeah, that roof area will create a heck of a lot of runoff.
Mm-hmm. And the taking out of mature trees, right? So I think that if I'm not mistaken, the number was in the 40s, and only replanting of 30, right? So we're taking out mature trees and we're putting in immature trees. Isn't that going to cause an issue?
Well,
stuff that's on the slope.
What the applicant's engineer is doing is complying with NJDEP stormwater management rules. And when you have an area, let's say, that is heavily wooded, and then you clear it and you pave it, you have a quicker time for that water to go from point A to point B, let's say. When you design a stormwater facility, you're basically holding back that water on the property, and you slowly discharge that water into a drainage system, so you mimic that wooded condition. It's sort of like having a bathtub or an above ground detention basin, right? A bathtub with a drain at the end, and that drain is very small. So you control the size of that drain, so you control the way the water leaves the site. When they meet stormwater regulations, they have to analyze the 2, 10, and 100-year storm events. and they have to reduce those storm events in the post-construction phase by 50, 75, and 80%. So what they have done, and there's comments in my report about some of the tweaking that's necessary for that report, but the general gist of that report is to show that the 2, 10, and 100-year storm events are being reduced as per NJDEP requirement. Our stormwater ordinance mimics NJDEP requirements. So whenever anybody changes the characteristic of a property, they must meet those conditions. And so if you look at the report underneath drainage or stormwater, you'll see the additional comments I have in red. That's addressing stormwater management. And there's things that we need to be addressed in that report to make sure that that complies. Has the applicant's engineer provided us information that is in general conformance with that ordinance? Yes. Are we asking for more? Yes. We're asking for revisions or clarifications in that report to make sure we are following the guidelines provided by NJDEP. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. I'm still concerned with I feel like we've had the 2, 10, 100-year, 500-year storm in the past 4 months. I mean, I think we in New Jersey have kind of bared the brunt of quite a number of severe storms over the past, just over the past 2 months. And I'm just concerned is whether or not even if all of this stuff is adequate for the residents downhill. Right now, you have a lot of trees and roots that are potentially sucking up this water. And I understand the detention basin is going to try to mimic that. But we've also had, French drains and drainage have all backed up because of the number of the amount of water going in. I'm just concerned for the residents that are downhill and around these folks and getting all of that potential runoff because the water cannot get into that detention basin because of the amount of water coming in.
I just want to note, Paul, correct me if I'm wrong, it will actually improve what they're getting currently downhill because currently the site naturally drains there.
That's correct. And if the system does overflow, it'll overflow out the grate on top of the outlet structure, which would have it go right out to Route 34. So if it does become overburdened with one of these incredible storms, it'll just flow out towards Route 34 as opposed to going to the back. And so there's a certain amount of improvement associated with taking drainage away from there that was going there before. And there's some elements in the design that have security to keep it going that way, as opposed to overflowing and going over the back if it fails or if it exceeds the design capacity.
So can I say, Chairman Marucci, Joe Petty, I just have a couple of questions. So you're telling me that if there's going to be any water, extra water, we're going to flood Route 34 now, right?
Not going to flood Route 34.
But we're getting water on 34.
Well, this system is designed so it totally recharges the 2-year storm, basically. So for every rainfall, they're really not going to have discharge to Route 34. It's only in the event where you're talking about these unregulated storms, the storms that are beyond what the ordinance requires. What everybody is asking, should we be regulating greater intensity storms? So I mean, it analyzes an 8-inch rainfall in one day, which is
seems like a lot of waivers and a lot of pushing on our end to try to get something approved. And I just don't understand it. But we're taking down trees, we're rerouting water. It was said earlier that if we didn't approve any of these waivers, then the property wouldn't be able to be developed. Okay, so why do we have to approve? Why do we have to do it? That's my question. Why?
We don't have.
That's, I mean, you generally do not zone and tax a property and when somebody comes in with an approved use, say you can't build that.
Okay.
So and now it's just, it's not an engineering question really, Mr. Petty. It's
That's fine.
probably a legal question.
Okay, thank you.
I have a
Thank
question.
you, Joe.
I have a question also.
Okay, Martin.
Are you planning to have, when the people living there or delivery trucks or anything are leaving to get and make a right onto Route 34, is there going to be a stop sign there?
Yes.
There definitely will be a stop sign there
Yes.
before they get onto 34 when they're coming out of the development.
Yes.
Okay.
And will there be allowed to be a left-hand turn? Because right now it's a double solid line.
That's my concern.
Because we know how many people cross double solid lines, and you have both that light, and that light is coming uphill, and then you have it on the other way coming downhill. It just seems like for 26 units with potential trucks going in and out, and delivery trucks. I mean, between Amazon and all the other online deliveries that are happening, there's, like I said before, I have a very, very big concern when it comes to traffic coming in and out of here. The number of units and the number of activity that could potentially happen. I also, I mean, just like Mr. Petty, I understand that it's zoned in a way, but it's also zoned in a way that you would need all of these waivers to get this what you're looking to do. Is there an opportunity to look at this and potentially shrink the size of this property to be more palatable to everyone around? It'll help the drainage, it'll potentially help the traffic, and it'll help a lot of things. Because looking at the note that we got today from Vina, there's a lot of red marking up on here, and I think we have to kind of go back and look at this and see, okay, how does it benefit the township? Obviously, keeping into account the developer and what they want to bring to the town, and bringing those apartments, bringing that here, but at the same time, my opinion, I don't think this benefits the township, because I think it's going to draw more traffic onto Route 34. And if you look at just this time of year, Route 34 is quite busy. If you look at it in the summer, it's busy. It's a very busy roadway. It's a very busy stretch, especially over there. And I think adding something of this size might be of an issue. So is there opportunity to go back and look at this more holistically and say, hey, is there opportunity to kind of shrink this to be a little bit, better and fit into all of our needs from a township's perspective, especially the surrounding areas?
Well, I will certainly discuss that point with my client, whether there's any opportunity to do that. But in terms of the traffic, we are a permitted use. We are within the required density. We are within the required FAR. So this is the size development that the town's master plan indicated was appropriate for this site. So, and the off-track concerns about traffic, which we'll hear more from the traffic engineer about how everything works, is supposedly considered when the master plan is developed for each site. But but I will bring that comment. I'm sure Sam is here and he's listening, and we will discuss it in detail.
Yeah, and I understand that we're looking at it based off of the size of the parcel. Mm-hmm. This development, or this would fit in the size of the parcel, but it's not the size of the developable land. I mean, if we were on 2 acres of land and only a half an acre was developable, then, I mean, really, we should be looking at what's the developable piece, not just the size of the land. Because I mean, and this is on a very big hill. A good portion of it is not developable. right? So we're trying to put a 1.89 acre building onto less than, and Vina, do you know what the developable size is? Of less than an acre, correct?
Yeah,
So we're trying to shoehorn a bigger building into a smaller footprint, into a footprint that's really not conducive to the developable piece of that land. Just because the size of the land is one thing, I just feel that we need to look at what the size of the developable land is, and that's what we should be looking at putting the building in, right? Look at to be more responsible, more of a smart development, as opposed to, hey, we have a 1.89 acre parcel. Let's just put the maximum building size in regardless of what the developable land is. And I feel like that's what we're trying to do here. I just want to make sure that we're looking out for the best interest of the township and everyone that's here at this point.
And Mr. De Palma, not to mention just the footprint of the lot and building itself, but you also have the topo and the slope considerations and difficulties.
Yes.
Absolutely. I will talk to the client. I will say that is the definition of a hardship, which our planner will address and the MLUL also addresses. We can certainly talk to them, but I just want to confirm with my engineer that even if we shrunk the size of the building, 90% of these waivers and variances would still exist.
we would still require, if we cut the building by 30%, we would still need all these waivers. We'd still.
Yeah, and that's a concern. Yeah, that's a concern.
Yeah. So
here's my other question to Paul. If we complied with everything, could anything be built here?
No.
And that's another concern.
Yeah.
Yes. So we're trying to find, as I explained in the beginning, we looked at this logically in terms of what we felt was the reasonable area to develop and tried to come up with that plan. And I do appreciate your feedback about your thoughts on how to approach it. And we will discuss that with our client.
Chairman Marucci?
Yes.
One more quick question about water runoff. I'm not a water runoff expert. Our engineer is well versed in that. But my question is, we look at the entire parcel that's going to be paved for water runoff. And this may sound a little quirky, but now we have a roof line, which whatever size it is, it could be 100 by 50. And that drainage aspect that comes off that roof, is that going to be pumped down through the gutters onto the regular surface, or is that going to go down into the system to take that water away?
No.
So that overwhelming amount of water from the roof now
goes into the drainage system.
Okay.
It goes into the drainage system, Mr. Mamakis.
Not a problem. Not to worry.
Well, Steve, you bring up a good point. If you have a typical, let's say a residential or a typical mixed use without a garage under, there is no runoff from the garage. Now, this is just a question. Is there a drainage system within that garage floor that also creates runoff?
Well, there's no water falling on it, but if something comes in on the vehicle, that as it pulls in, it will run out the back door to the inlet that's in the parking lot immediately behind it and go into the drainage system.
So if it rains heavily, so I don't misunderstand you, if it rains heavily, you're saying no water will get down into the basement? Into the garage area? I'm sorry, the garage area?
Correct.
Okay,
Correct.
so cars can get down there, but water can't.
Right, but yes, because it's pitched out up from the garage out to the parking lot in the back where we have an inlet to collect the water.
Gotcha. Okay.
And there may be floor drains. They haven't been designed yet, but if they are, they would also be connected to the drainage system.
Okay. So you have the possibility of garage water, you have the roof runoff, and you have the impervious around the building. Okay. Do we have any other questions from the board?
Yes, Chairman Minucci, I'd like to ask one more question. Commissioner Anderson. Mr. Anderson, I know about the 2 points of access, you only have one. Was any attempt made to maybe purchase an easement from the adjacent property, which is, I guess, north of your site and is in an AF zone too?
I'm not aware of any effort in that regard.
Okay, so you're telling me then nobody tried to see if they could possibly obtain an easement or even the property to get a second point of access?
That's correct. Not, I'm not aware of it. I mean, that's
Okay.
not my part of this business. I don't do the real estate negotiations.
Okay, so, okay, to your knowledge. Okay, thank you.
Okay, again, any other questions before we open it to the public? Okay, Mr. Sordillo, I guess we're going to open it to the public.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I think that's should be the appropriate next step is, once again, just to remind the public, this will be just questions of this witness and the testimony given this evening. You'll have an opportunity to make public statements and testimony on your own, excuse me, at a later time. But if you have any questions of this witness, there's directions on the screen how to participate.
I have two callers. First one, last name Desai. You're allowed to talk.
Yes.
Good evening.
Good evening, Chairman and the esteemed members of Woolbridge Township Planning Board. I'm listening this testimony and making points. But before I say my comments, I just want to make sure to Township Planning Department that I have never received official notice from applicant. It was good that our homeowners association office received the notice and they send it to me. That's why I'm here. But I never received at my home. So that's out. My first question, and it's kind of a covering multiple things.
Excuse me, Mr. Desai, this is Joe Sordillo, the board attorney.
Hi, Joe. How are you?
Your full name and address for the record.
Sure.
So that I can review that as well.
Yes, sure. My name is Kiran, Kiran, Desai, D like David, ESAI.
Okay.
The address is 61 Corona Court, Old Bridge, New Jersey, Spring Hill Village.
Thank you.
I'm exactly behind this development. My window can see the property there. I can see from my window. Now, my main concern to chairman and the planning and engineering official, that did you issue the latest report after the latest submission from the applicant? I did not get it. I had Oprah request, but I'm not going that way right now. The previous report, traffic consultant report on May 26, fire marshal report on May 25, conservation office May 24, township planner and engineer June 1st. Is applicant comply with or address the concern shown in those reports? Because if I see the fire marshal report, he is completely saying this is out of question. This should not be granted, unsatisfactory. Ms. Sawant, can you attest to that those concerns are met? Even Gary Lavallo has detailed memo, and even Rakesh Darji, the traffic engineer, and nothing has been addressed to my knowledge in this testimony today. And Mr. Anderson and Ms. Cully, thanks for meeting with us and trying to accommodate our point. But I'm still not convinced, even at this today, that water will be not flowing on our direction. Because if I heard right, and I'm ready to sit down with you guys again, with my friends and neighbors of this Spring Hill village, I believe you are talking that there will be a water collection point, pipe, and that pipe you are going to tie to DOT's water system. Now that pipe, how large or how big? Because the heavy rain, what we just had in last storm, if that kind of rain comes, and last 10, 15 years, starting from Sandy, we all see how bad the rain is. So that rain, how faster it will go in a pipe. It may not catch everything in a moment. So excess water is still going to go down the hill and will run off to our property. I'm not an engineer, Mr. Anderson. I'm just a layman. I understand. And that's what I'm saying. So I'm not convinced at this point. One other thing.
Mr. Desai, I spoke to the engineer that you had engaged to come to our meeting.
I'm
And
sorry?
I spoke to the engineer that you engaged to come to our meeting to represent you. And he was satisfied with the redesign and had no further questions with regard to drainage. So maybe you should follow up with him and get more details. And if needs be,
that's
we can
what I
sit
say. I
down
need some
for a
more
conference with you
understanding.
and do it. But any other questions for me, Mr. Desai?
Yes, my other question, on June 1st memo of planner, Ms. Sawan, and page number 5, let me just know, page number 6, she's talking critical slope pursuant to section 250-82B2, no building or structure should be erected, constructed or enlarged above the below ground level within 50 feet of the top of critical slope as defined above. The board may reduce the required distance based upon finding by municipal engineer and design adequately provide for the safety of the structure as well as the preservation of the slope. Proposed plan has no such buffer. Applicant should provide testimony regarding the same. And I'm just going to mention right here, I have been very active and following land use law in township of Woolbridge from almost 35 years. And I don't recall that either planning board or zoning board had given just a carte blanche this critical slope deviation. And if we are going to give it today, this esteemed planning board, that means this planning board is rewriting land use law without proper process, because I know what's a process, how to change the zoning. So there are lots of things which I can keep going on, but I know the time of the hour is so late, so I don't want everybody's evening or night to be miserable.
Mr. Desai, we met with you. Are there any questions? As much as I understand the public has their right, this is not the question.
Yeah, no, okay. I understand, because I want to reserve some of the question when your traffic consultant come or landscaping consultant, so I can address that time. The traffic issue, what fire marshal has given, and Mr. Darji also had issued a memo way back in May.
Mr. Desai, the questions are to Paul right now, not to my traffic engineer.
Paul is, I'm okay right now.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Desai.
Thank you.
Ask questions of the other witnesses, and at the end of the application, you will have an opportunity to provide or a statement at that time.
Thank you. Thank you. And everybody have a good night.
Next caller, Mr. Masterson.
And callers, when you join, please identify yourself, state your name and your address, please.
My name is Jack Masterson. My address, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
My address is 104 Pendleton Place, Old Bridge, New Jersey, also in Spring Hill Village.
Thank you.
And my question for Mr. Anderson is, you're proposing putting a building up on the edge of a critical slope, not only a brand new building, but the cars that are parked on the edge of this critical slope on soil that has never, ever been loaded with this type of load before. Has that been taken into account? It's not just the footings, it's everything that goes with it on virgin soil.
It's, as I tried to explain, these are not on top of the existing soil. They're below existing grade. So in many ways, that soil has been loaded by the 10 foot of existing soil that's on top of it. And also it is, you know, it is not, just to be, so you're clear, it's not like loading on, like you walking down the embankment. It's not on the top. It's well submerged from grade. So anything that is constructed out in the parking lot, if it's on any kind of fill, it has to be compacted, and it would not be virgin soil. So yes, in answer to your question, Mr. Masterson, yes, we have given it a lot of thought, and we would not propose a building that was in any way in danger of falling down the hill or in any way having a structural failure.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, is that the end of Mr. Masterson's questions?
Yes.
Okay, and do we have any other hands up? Anybody else from the public? And if not, we'll give it the customary 30 seconds or so to see if anybody else calls in.
We have another caller, Carolyn Gordon.
Okay.
Yes, you do. Hi, good evening. My name is Carolyn Gordon. I live at 132 Pendleton Place. I am the last group of houses at Spring Hill Village, right before you exit onto Spring Hill Road. So I'm down the hill, and I travel Spring Hill Road more than anything else, next to 34, I should say. I totally understand where Eric De Palma is coming from, because this is a major concern for me that I have addressed also with the people here at Spring Hill Village with regards to the water overflow issues, and more, just as equally important there is the traffic and how you exit and get on. When I exit Spring Hill Village onto Spring Hill Road.
Excuse me, Ms. Gordon, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but once again, this time is a period just for questions of the witness. You will have an opportunity to make testimony and provide statements later on. This is just questions of this witness, Mr. Anderson.
Okay, sorry. So, Mr. Anderson, I do have a question for you. I apologize, everyone. It's not making sense to me how you're going to divert the traffic going north and south on Spring Hill Road. Over there, there have been so many accidents over the years that they finally, we pleaded with them to put a traffic light there and to
Ms.
have
Gordon?
this structure.
Ms. Gordon, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I did not provide any traffic testimony. That's one of our other witnesses, which will provide that.
Okay,
And maybe that particular question of yours can be answered by her.
certainly.
I believe she actually looked into that in preparation because we met with you and you asked the same question. So we
Yeah.
have a traffic expert. We looked into that and we
Okay.
have answers, but it's not appropriate for Paul to answer.
Got it. Thank you very much. That's all that I have.
Chairman, I think you're on mute. You're speaking.
Grace
I'm
Williams.
sorry. Thank you.
No worries.
Do we see any other hands up or any other callers?
Grace Williams, hand up.
Can you hear me? My name is Grace Williams.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, my name is Grace Williams. I live at 59 Corona Court in Spring Hill Village. I am directly at the lower end of the property that's being developed. And my question here is, I didn't hear anything about how the higher level will be managed. And that specifically I looked at the property and saw that it will be some type of recreational terrace. And
Before I cut you off, but Grace, we have an architect who's going to talk about that. Paul just does site design. He's dealing with the water issues, utilities, and the design of a site plan. We have an architect, a licensed one, who prepared the floor plans and elevations. We'll talk about the amenity space, the recreational roof, how it's a passive recreation space, and all those questions. He is not yet spoken.
Okay, Ms. Curley, if you allow me to express and ask my questions, then you will hear what I have to say. Okay, thank you very much. So my question to Mr. Anderson is, with the development being what it is in the area that it is, the potential impact that it has on behind us, specifically when the water issue, as well as the building, the building site and the size of the building site is going to be an issue. And I think if the consideration will be to reduce the size of it, specifically because this whole issue was brought up when I noticed that a tree was behind the development. So, Desai said we were never notified, which we weren't. So I'm just wondering how that can be considered to reduce the size of the building, to reduce the impact on the development, being that it is directly behind my home and the home that's there.
I'm going to interrupt. I don't think this is an appropriate question for Paul.
Why isn't it? When he mentioned something about the building and what is behind the property.
You're asking him if he can redesign the building to make it smaller.
I'm not asking him to redesign the building. What I am asking him is that something of a consideration. And please let Mr. Anderson answer the question and not jump in, please.
Well, I believe Councilman De Palma indicated that it had expressed a very similar concern that you have just expressed, and we said that we would discuss it with my client afterwards.
Okay.
So we have addressed that issue, and the answer is the same to your question as it was to Mr. De Palma's question.
Thank you very much, Mr. Anderson.
You're welcome.
Okay. Anyone else after Ms. Williams?
There's an Allen.
Okay. And again, is this question related to the engineering testimony of the portion of this meeting, or is it a question that is going to be asked for something later?
It is a question for the engineer portion of this meeting.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, everybody. So, you know, I do understand that members of
Can you please state your name and your address, please?
I'm sorry. Yes, Alan Friedman, 56 Corona Court, also in Spring Hill Village, and also right behind the proposed building line.
Okay, thank you.
So I understand that members of the community did meet with Amanda Curley, and I'm not sure if Paul was on the meeting as well. And questions were raised about the water, and he did make mention how they're addressing the water issue. But my question is, unless I'm misunderstanding something, it seems to me that with the dye test and where the water is ultimately ending up off of Route 34, that this is still an unknown, and it's based on some sort of hypothesis at this point in time. Is that correct?
I think there's a lot of evidence that leads that, especially since the town engineer went out and actually uncovered the manhole that I hypothesized was there. So I think we're gaining some data towards it being conclusive. And when you put this dye in the pipe and it goes to a place, it has to have a route to get there, and it was there within 5 to 10 minutes. So it's a direct route. You know, I think it's a very good hypothesis at this point.
It still is a hypothesis at this point, if I understood Ms. Shapiro correctly, that so we don't really know where the water is ultimately ending up.
We do. We saw where it ended up. We just don't know how it gets there exactly. We know exactly where it ends up.
And where is that?
That's on the east side of Route 34.
So, but is
in the wetlands area down across from where the drugstore is.
So is it ending up behind the drugstore in that big lot of land, or
no,
really
on the
clear?
opposite side of the street from the drugstore.
So there's storm drains there that it's going to?
Yes.
All right, thank you. That's all the questions I have. I have no further questions.
Mr. Chairman, you're on mute.
Thanks for reminding me again. Do we have any additional callers after Mr. Friedman that have questions for this this portion of the testimony?
I do not see any raised hands.
Okay, so again, we will try our customary 30 seconds to see if anybody else calls in, and then we'll move on.
No raised hands.
Okay, I think enough time has been given.
Mr. Chairman, if I may make a recommendation is, given that we do have one other application on for this evening, and we do know that the Brightpoint application does have to come back before the board. We know finishing all the witnesses tonight if we marched forward, plus there was a number of questions that the witness had said that they would be, or the applicant said that they would be coming back to address, that it may make sense, and this is up to the board, to stop this application at the time, carry it to the next hearing without further public notice being required, and moving on to the second application to see if we can complete that application this evening. But that would be a decision left to, Mr. Chairman, to you and the board.
Yes, I am in agreement.
Yes, me too. And Mr. Sedell, I was actually going to bring it up before the next testimony. What is the time limit for us that then we would have to vote to extend?
I think it's this hearing.
Yes, we need to get consent to further extend that time period.
Okay. Do you need a motion to move it to motion?
Yes, yes. Do we need a motion, Mr. Sordillo,
Well,
correct?
I think let's just, before we do make a motion, let's just discuss, make sure that everybody's on the same page, including the applicant, that this public hearing on this application will be carried to our next meeting, which I believe, based on my records, is November 30th.
And do we have room on that agenda?
That is what I'm going to ask Ms. Sawant. I don't know.
Yes, I think we can carry this application to November 30th.
Okay, is that acceptable to the applicant?
Yes, and I just have one question, just to throw it out there. I was talking to our architect. If we can go to 4 stories, we can reduce the building footprint by 30 to 40%. Is that something that board members would want to even consider, or no?
In that case, you would be in front of the zoning board, correct?
Yes.
You wouldn't be in front of the.
So you'd have to move. You're correct. So we will look into other options. And yes, we can set.
Okay, you'll be able to gather that information for the next meeting?
We will certainly try. If not, I will appear again before you and further extend.
Okay, very good. All right, any input from our professionals or board members regarding this motion?
I have one question. I think the motion, just to summarize, the motion would be that we be carrying this application to the next meeting on November 30th. And for all members of the public here in attendance, that no further public notice will be given. This is your notice that the hearing will continue at the regular board meeting on November 30th at 7:30.
Joe, I think.
Okay, Mr. Lenning, did you have a question?
Actually, you're right. No, I keep saying that. I apologize, Mr. Chairman. Vina was just going to correct me, is that because these are virtual meetings, the public notice is still required until we go in person. I still get, after a year and a half, I'm still having trouble getting used to that.
Yeah, you're not the only one.
We will renotice, and we have sent the notice to Mr. Desai, but I will continue to do what we're doing.
Thank you.
No problem.
Okay, Mr. Lenning, did you have something?
Basically, I was just going to ask about the notice because 2 residents did say they weren't notified. So I just want to make sure that everybody's aware of the board meetings. Thank you.
And what is the method of notification to the residents?
Certified.
It is
Yes,
certified.
I have seen the certified receipts, which is the requirement to be submitted to proof of service. And those have been, it has been published in the newspaper as well. So,
And upon request of the association, we actually mailed to 2 locations. One is an address that wasn't on your property list. So we are over noticing the association.
Okay, so if there is nothing else, we'll put it to a vote to extend this meeting this application to the next meeting. And do I have a motion?
I'll move it.
By Mr. De Palma, and a second?
I'll second.
I'll
Joe
By
second.
Mr. Petty.
Mr. De Palma,
Yes.
Mr. Lauer,
Yes.
Mr. Mamakis,
Yes.
Ms. Cannon, Ms. Cannon,
Her screen looks frozen.
Yeah.
Yeah, we lost her.
Either that or she's sleeping.
Yeah.
Yes, there she is.
Ms. Cannon,
Nope, she's frozen.
Mr. Schmitz,
Yes.
Mr. Lenning,
Yes.
Mr. Petty,
Yes.
Mr. Pink, Mr. Pink,
Yes.
Mr. Garcia,
Yes.
Chairman Marucci.
Yes. Okay, thank you, everybody.
thank you very much.
Okay, Mr. Sordillo, what is now the process for extending time, or?
The applicant did consent. During that discussion, she advised that she consented, and what we normally do, we have a form that we'll send over to her that she will sign and complete.
Okay, excellent. Okay, now we have time now to move on to the next applicant.
It's up to the chairman and the board. If we can start the next application and see if how far we can get through it.
Okay, I'm okay with that if everybody else is. And we'll get as far through it as we can. Okay, so the next application is 28-2021P. Yuch Lin Hua, a minor subdivision with C variance.
Thank you and good evening.
Good
My
evening.
name is Michael LePerry. I'm an attorney with the law firm of Mandelbaum Salzburg, and I'm counsel to the applicant Yulin Hua. I know we're a little pressed for time tonight, so I think we could probably get this done if we move quickly, probably in about 30 minutes, if the board will let us. It's a very simple application. We're seeking a minor subdivision approval to subdivide one oversized lot into two conforming lots with one minor bulk variance due to the currently existing property that has an existing residential structure on it that is within the rear yard setback. The applicant's not seeking any new or additional variances as a result of this application. With me tonight, I have Mr. Ben Wu, who's a representative of the owner applicant, and my engineer, Mr. Bob Key. I believe Mr. Wu, if I'm looking at the participants list, may need to get promoted. Yeah, the applicant's name is on there as a participant.
Yes.
Yeah, we can see him and we can hear him.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Mr. Wu, can you please state your name for the record?
Okay, my name is Benedict Wu.
Wait, hold on one second. We got to swear everyone in. Let's. I know we're moving fast, and I'm appreciative of that. But let's just swear in both witnesses at this time, so that way we can just keep moving forward with the application. So I see Mr. Wu, and your other witness is Mr. Lee. I think you said. I'm just looking for on my screen.
Okay, that's I'm on behalf of my wife Esther.
Hold on one second. Hold on one second, Mr. Wu.
Yeah.
He's going to ask you to swear that your testimony is true.
Oh, okay. Yes.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just need to have you on the screen. Yes, thank you. Please raise your right hand. Do you swear the testimony you're going to give this evening is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
And can you just, for the record, please state your name and spell it for the record? Excuse me.
My name is Benedict Wu.
Okay.
Benedict. Last name is Wu. W.
Are we going to swear in Mr. Key?
Yeah, and where is Mr. Key? I'm just trying to find him on my screen.
Got him.
I see him.
Give another wave, Mr. Key.
Here we are.
Oh, there we go. Oh, you know what it is? It's listed under Robert Key. I see it. Okay, I see. I was reading it wrong. Do you please raise your right hand? Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give this evening is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, sir, I do.
Okay, once again, could you also state your name and spell your last name for the record?
Robert, capital K-E-E.
Okay, thank you.
And just for clarifications, Mr. Sordillo, Mr. Wu is the owner?
I'm gonna get to that. I'll make sure we lead with that.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
Mr. Wu, can you please tell us your relationship to the owner?
Yes, I'm her husband.
Okay, thank you. And can you please tell us what the property is currently being used for?
Okay, currently the property is a rental property. There's an existing house on that property. And
do you use that property as a rental property?
Yes.
And can you just give us a brief indication of why you are looking to subdivide this property?
Yeah, the current goal is to build a house to
for us to live there, so we can easily to maintain that rental property.
So the new house you would build so that you and your wife can live in the new house.
Yes, correct.
And it would also give you an opportunity to manage and keep an eye on the property that would continue to be used as a rental property?
Yes.
Do you know how long have you owned the property, or how long has your wife owned the property?
Well, my wife owned that property probably 15 years. And that property, that existing house may be more than 50 years old.
Okay, thank you very much. In the interest of time, I think that was a pretty good overview because it's a very small application. So I will, if anyone has any questions, I will allow the board and its professionals to ask you some questions. And if not, I'll move on to the next witness.
Okay, do we have any questions from the board professionals for Mr. Yu? Mr. Wu, I'm sorry.
Mr. Wu.
Thank you.
I don't have any questions.
Okay, board members, any questions for Mr. Wu? Okay, so we can move on to Mr. Key.
Great. Mr. Key, good evening. If you could please just provide the board with some of your credentials and maybe some boards that you've testified before.
Yes, I'm a licensed professional engineer, licensed professional land surveyor, and a licensed professional planner in the state of New Jersey. Got my engineering education from NJIT. I've been licensed since the early 70s. I've appeared before, by many years, thousands of boards, including Old Bridge, because my office is right around the corner.
Okay, very good, Mr. Key. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Key, if you could please just, the plan has been pulled up onto the screen. If you could just identify the plan, make sure that it's yours, and then please give us an overview of the existing site layout.
Yes, I have the ability to point. Oh, you do. The property is officially designated as block 2081 lot 43. It's located at the northern corner of Oliver Street and Dodd Street. As Mr. Wu said, the property has an older structure on it. And the rear yard variance that we're requesting is pre-existing from was either approved by a different board, or the building was prior to or pre-existed the ordinances of Old Bridge. The layout of the property is that there's a vacant spot on the exact corner of the intersection, and the building is set on what used to be a separate lot. I believe it was called Lot 47 on the tax maps. And the previous owner, I think it was, acquired a Lot 48, which was a 25-foot by 100-foot deep lot from the township of Old Bridge. And when the township sold it, they put a requirement that it could not be used for anything except for accessory use for the residential structure that was adjacent to it.
So just to clarify real quickly, the existing house you're saying can't really be relocated as a result of the deed restriction from the township?
Yes. It cannot be pushed further south to make more equal sized lots. However, this property exists within the R50 zone and, R5 zone. And both the remaining lot, which will contain the existing structure, and the new lot that's proposed meet all ordinance requirements for the R5 zone.
So there's no new variances being proposed on this application?
None whatsoever.
Okay. And just to clarify, the only existing variance, it's a rear yard setback where it's 2.5 feet off the property line?
Approximately 2.2, I believe it is, to be exact.
Okay. Okay. With that being said, so we're going to be 2 conforming lots with the exception of that particular variance.
Yes, which presently exists and nothing's going to change.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Key. I don't know if there's any questions, but we'll see if there's any questions. It's like I indicated to start, it's a very simple minor subdivision application. Oh, and I'm sorry, real quick before I get into any questions, the board professionals issued a professional technical review letter. I think it was dated October 1st. We went through it in detail rather than going through it line item by line item tonight with Mr. Key. We've agreed to essentially comply with all of the requirements on there. Most of them appear to be, if we're lucky enough to get an approval tonight, it would be post-approval slight plan modifications or issues that can be addressed at the time of building permit application. So we will comply with all of the issues on the engineering review letter.
Okay, Ms. Shapiro.
Mr.
you have any
Chairman,
input?
yeah, I just want to apologize to the applicant because there were a couple of things that I noticed that I wanted it to be on the record. It was not in my review comment. When the notes on the side of the page that Vina has now panned to says that the application is the deed, this subdivision will be filed by deed. I just want to confirm that with the applicant's engineer / land surveyor.
Yes, it was our intent to confirm this by deed, yes.
Okay, so there's 2 certification notes by you, Mr. Key. I asked that you consolidate it. It's not required for it to be 2. And then there's 1 note that says that the markers as shown have been found or will be set. I don't see them on the plan, so I assume you will be setting them.
Yes, we would probably request to hold off for the setting of the actual points until after the construction of the new house so that they're not destroyed. So
Right. So then I would ask for you to add the certification for the township clerk that a bond has been submitted for the future setting as per the map filing law. And so, our comments do say to remove the signature line, see at the top of the page for the township clerk, but I do want you to add that certification here in the authorization page. And then just note, if you take a look at your certifications, the 2 that's up on the screen, one has a survey date of 6/29/2019, and the other one has a survey date of 6/9/2019. I believe you either missed a number on one spot or you added a number on the other spot. Just make sure when you consolidate that certification that the correct date is shown.
yes, definitely.
Apologize
for that.
Okay, and then just so your client knows, there has to be a bond for those monuments that are to be set, and anything that I haven't talked to as far as the memo for, sorry, it's getting late. The memo that we issued, I heard before that you had agreed to take care of the other comments.
Yes, I believe a lot of them are minor in nature and can be handled rather quickly.
Thank you, Mr. Key.
I would just ask the one is if we can have the option to, as part of the condition of approval, an option to either set the monuments ahead of time, because we're talking about a minor subdivision. There's not going to be a whole lot of, the bond might cost more than setting them and resetting them if one is destroyed. So it might just be easier. So I just ask that we have that option and we'll figure it out down the line.
Okay.
Okay, can we have that map put up again just real quick? I have just one quick question. And it may be meaningless. Okay, on on proposed lot 43.11, at the very top by Oliver Ave, it shows lot 43, 44, 45, 46. What does that denote?
Those are what our tax assessor's office consider, they're called add-in lots. For some reason, they were always like these small 25-foot lots, you know, in certain sections of our town. Technically, it's considered one lot under one common ownership, like 46, 45, 44, and 43 are one common ownership.
How many deeds?
One, I believe, but the tax assessor, and this isn't my domain, but the tax assessor had gone in and eliminated them the last round. And I think now during the reevaluation, he was asked to put them in, but I might be speaking out of turn. From what I understand from conversations that we've had in the past about this section of town. But that's my understanding of those.
I think some of them, like for example, Mr. Key was mentioned about that one lot which is deed restricted for open space. That lot 48 was an individual lot prior to 1975. And as the owner bought that property, because of the common ownership, they were combined in our tax data and were treated as one lot. But that's why you see the lot 48, 47, those are the original lot numbers. And I did get a chance to look at the deed for lot 48, thanks to Mr. Lauer. I will not take credit for that. But I was very curious when I started reviewing this application, and my first reaction was, why create a subdivision when the home is going to be on one side of the property line? It breaks the harmony of, it breaks the continuity of the street view. But then I came across this deed when I was speaking to Mr. Lauer, and he gave me a little bit of history because he's familiar with the area. But because of this deed restriction on lot 48, the home cannot be really moved to the center of the proposed lot. And then it started making sense to me. But my original concern was, why are we approving a subdivision when the home is going to be on one side and we have this open field on the other side? That's why I included that comment in my memo. The one other comment I have, and which I had brought it up in our memo, is the address of the home is 43 Oliver. Now with the subdivision, we are creating a new home that will actually have frontage on Oliver Avenue. The existing home, which currently has an address of 43 Oliver or address of Oliver Avenue, will then only have access to Dodge Street. So should the board act favorably, I think the applicant should work with the engineering office and probably retain 43 Oliver for the new home and then have a new address for Dodge Street.
For the existing home.
For the existing home.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yep, and typically we'll work that out with the tax assessor and the engineering department post approval.
If you get approved.
I think, yes, one last question. And I know I brought this up only because in the past we have gone through minor subdivisions at the planning board review level. The applicant agrees that the setbacks and the home is going to be consistent or will conform to the R5 standards. And later on, it turns out that these applicants come back asking for a bigger home. I just wanted to have some sort of testimony, because the allowed floor area, based on the allowed floor area ratio of 0.4, 2,630 square feet home may be built. So I just wanted to hear from you if the home will be conforming with the R5 standards, or your intention is to go in front of the zoning board to ask for a bigger home.
I'll tell you my opinion is that right now we're just seeking a subdivision to build one conforming lot on the subdivision. I mean, sometimes when you're dealing with plans, there's some minor deviations due to some constraints in the way the land is situated. But I'll ask Mr. Wu if he wants to testify as to whether or not he intends to conform if he does, in fact, move forward with making an application to actually build the home.
Mr. Library, my intention is not to put Mr. Wu on spot. I just want him to be aware, because often what happens is the applicants get upset with the planning department saying that it has taken us like 2-3 years to get this approval, which is incorrect, because you first went to the planning board, then you're going to the zoning board. There is delay. Sometimes we come across issues where the applicant starts building the home and the construction office finds out that the proposed home is in violation. So I just want to make that clear, that your limitation is roughly 2,600. So keep that in mind. And if things change, then be prepared. You will have to go in front of the zoning board and get a D4 variance for the home.
Oh, I certainly appreciate you pointing that out. We are aware of the limitations on the lot, and it's our intent at this point in time to, we're just seeking to build a conforming, to have a conforming lot on that side of the property.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That's all from me.
Okay, anything else, Nicole?
No, I'm good. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Board members, any questions from any of you?
I just had one question, Mr. Key. Mr. Key, you mentioned something about a 2.5-foot setback. Is that on the existing home? It's 2.5 feet from the property line?
Yes, it's the rear property line. If you pull up the plan again, you can see it. It's dimensioned right on my plan, right there.
Okay. And the new lot will not require anything. This is really just for the existing, and that's
right. And we don't know when that house was built. It's a fairly old structure.
Don't make it worse.
Pardon?
What's up, Ernie?
No.
Is he frozen? Oh, there he is. Ernie, any questions or comments? You have to unmute yourself. There you go.
No, I have nothing. Thank you.
Okay.
I didn't have any more questions, Dean. I was just I just wanted to clarify that, because I was trying to look. I'm looking at it. My eyes aren't as good as they used to be.
Yeah.
I just wanted to.
You want to borrow these?
Just wanted to make sure that I was following along correctly. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay, if nothing else, we'll put it to a vote. And Mr. Sodillo, would you like to summarize?
Absolutely, Mr. Chairman.
We need to open it to the public.
Oh, yes.
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry. Sorry. Okay.
It's definitely late in the
Late. It's a minor, so I didn't even consider it. All right, should we cut the 30 seconds down to 15?
No raised hands.
No raised hands. All right, we'll give it 20 seconds. That'll bring us to the top of the minute.
No raised hands.
Okay, no raised hands. I think we're good. All right, so we will close it to the public. And we will then put it to summary from Mr. Sodillo.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. A vote in favor of this application would be a vote to granting the minor subdivision of this property into 2 residential lots. There's one variance that would be granted, which is the existing condition with the rear yard setback that would be for the proposed lot 43.12 with regard to the existing building located thereon. With regard to conditions, the applicant agreed to comply with the board's professional reports, that the deeds would, the subdivision would be perfected by deed, and that they would work with the township engineering, planning, and tax office with regard to the creation of the new address on Todd Road, and keeping the existing address on Oliver Road for the new home. And that is all I have as conditions. So a vote would be with regard to those terms.
Okay, pretty straightforward. Okay, so based on Mr. Sordillo's summation, do I have a motion?
I'll move it.
I'll
By
second.
Mr. Lauer, and a second by Mr. Mamakis.
We need a roll call on this.
Yep.
Mr. De Palma,
Yes.
Mr. Lauer,
Yes.
Mr. Mamakis,
Yes.
Ms. Cannon,
Yes.
Mr. Schmitz,
Yes.
Mr. Lenning,
Yes.
Mr. Petty,
Yes.
Mr. Pink,
Yes.
Mr. Garcia,
Yes.
Mr. Marucci.
Yes. Okay,
Carries.
and with that, if there's nothing else, we have a motion to adjourn.
Actually, Mr. Chairman, we do just have to do the general public comment period.
Oh, okay.
I don't think it's going to take long. We could still probably do the 15 seconds because I don't think anyone's still around, but technically we have to open to general public comments to anything that might not be on the, subject to a separate public hearing.
Just
Gotcha,
briefly,
okay.
thank you, everyone. I greatly appreciate your time. Hopefully I kept it quiet, kept it quick for you. Have a great rest of the evening, and thanks again.
All right, thank you, sir.
Good job.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you, you too.
Thank you, Mr. Wu. Take care.
Yeah, take care. God bless.
No raised hands.
Yeah, being that we adjourned the first meeting, I didn't think there would be any. I will give it another 10 seconds.
I have one raised hand.
Okay.
Mr. Masterson.
Yes. My question is, will we be able to publicly speak about the Brightpoint housing at the next meeting? Should I save my comments for then?
Yes, there's no one here, correct, Mr. Sordillo? There's no one here to answer your question, so yes, we'll carry
I
it
don't
to
have
next
any
month's
question. I
meeting.
just had a statement, but
Yes,
I
yes.
should read it
Mr.
next
Chairman, if I
time.
may, Mr. Masterson, you will, at the next hearing, the applicant will continue with their witnesses. You'll have an opportunity to question those witnesses if you have any questions. And then when they finished and complete with their presentation of witnesses, then it will be open to general public comment and statements. And at that time, you can make a statement, you can provide testimony, whatever you would like at that point.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Okay, Vina, any other raised hands?
No.
Anything else from anyone else?
Please
Okay,
hold
do I
on,
have
please.
a motion to adjourn?
I make the motion.
Second it.
And second by Mr. Pink.
Mr. De Palma,
Yes.
Mr. Lauer,
Yes.
Mr. Mamakis,
Yes.
Ms. Cannon, Ms. Cannon,
Yes.
Mr. Schmitz,
Yes.
Mr. Lenning,
Yes.
Mr. Petty,
Yes.
Mr. Pink,
Yes.
Mr. Garcia,
Yes.
Chairman Marucci.
Yes, and I'd like to thank everybody for hanging in till almost 11 o'clock.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Night.
Good night.
Have a good evening,
Have a
everybody.
great evening, everybody.
Good night.
Take care.